somewhere in the old temples, carved in stone, the Buddha is smiling. The eyes are soft, almost closed. The face is at rest. It is the smile of someone who has stopped struggling with life. That smile came from something the Buddha realized about the human heart. Tonight, we will sit with what he found. Before we begin, feel free to share what time it is and where you're listening from. The Buddha taught that joy is one of the natural expressions of a heart at peace. Not something we manufacture, but something we uncover. It rises on its own when we stop grasping, stop pushing life away, and simply rest in what is true. Let your body soften, and let the day's weight set itself down. You do not need to know anything about Buddhism to listen. You do not need to stay awake or follow every word. These teachings are old and simple. Let them reach you in their own time, and let whatever arrives be welcome. Thank you for joining us here at Midnight Monk. Let us begin. There is a story that the Buddha, near the end of his life, was asked what he and his students had truly gained from all their years of practice. He answered simply, "Nothing at all." Then a gentle half-smile crossed his face, the same soft smile you see on the old statues, and he said, "But let me tell you what we lost. We lost anxiety. We lost restlessness. We lost the endless hunger for the next thing." The questioner had expected a list of riches. Instead, the Buddha pointed to what he had set down. And in that setting down, he said, was a happiness he could not have imagined while his hands were still full. This is where we begin tonight, with the strange truth that joy is not something we add to our lives. It is what remains when we stop reaching. We tend to think of joy as a peak, a bright, loud, unmistakable feeling. We imagine it arriving the way a storm arrives, sweeping over us, lifting us up. And because we picture it that way, most of us quietly believe we do not have much of it. We feel a glimmer now and then, and the rest of the time we wait. We assume joy lives somewhere up ahead, on the far side of some achievement, some arrival, some moment when life finally settles into place. But the joy the Buddha pointed to is not a peak. It is a ground. It is the fullness of simply being here, awake, with nothing missing. It is closer to deep peace than to excitement. It is the feeling of enough. There is an old story that points to this directly. Let us explore the tale of a young monk who came to his teacher complaining that the practice felt dry and joyless. "I do everything I am told," he said. "I sit, I walk, I eat, I sleep, and still I feel nothing. Where is this happiness you speak of?" The teacher listened, then asked him a question. "When you eat your rice in the morning, where are you?" The young monk frowned. "I am eating my rice, of course." "Are you?" the teacher said. "Or are you already thinking of the work that follows breakfast?" The monk was quiet. "And when you do that work," the teacher went on, "where are you then?" "I suppose," the monk admitted slowly, "I am thinking of the rest I will have once it is done." "And when you rest?" The monk lowered his eyes. "I am thinking of the next morning's rice." The teacher smiled. "Then you have never once eaten your rice, and you have never once rested. You move through your whole life standing just outside of it, with your hand always reaching for the next door. No wonder it feels dry. You are never actually inside the room you are in." He leaned forward. "Tomorrow, when you eat your rice, only eat your rice. That is the whole teaching. The monk did as he was told, and to his great surprise, a bowl of plain rice, eaten with full attention, turned out to be one of the most satisfying things he had ever tasted. To understand why we feel so little of joy, we have to look honestly at what stands in its way. And the first obstacle is so familiar that we rarely notice it at all. It is the quiet habit of grasping. In the old teachings, this is called the near enemy of joy. A near enemy is subtle. It is not the obvious opposite of a thing. It is something that looks almost like the real thing, close enough to fool us, while quietly keeping the real thing away. The near enemy of joy is attachment. The restless reaching for more, the holding on, the chasing after pleasure that never quite lets us rest in the pleasure we already have. Think of how this works with someone you love. There is a person whose company you treasure. You have been waiting all week to see her, and then the evening comes, and you are finally sitting across from her. But instead of resting in it, some part of your mind is already somewhere else. You are aware of how quickly the evening will pass. You are wondering whether it is going as well as it should. You are reaching, even now, for a moment that has not yet arrived, and in doing so, you miss the one that has. The very thing you wanted is in front of you, and you cannot quite taste it. It happens with the smallest pleasures too. Consider a single bite of food. How rarely do we actually receive it? The warmth, the flavor, the texture on the tongue. More often, we are already reaching for the next bite before we have finished this one. We eat the whole meal that way, always one mouthful ahead of ourselves, and at the end we are full, but somehow we have tasted very little. It happens on the days we have looked forward to most. Picture someone who has saved for a long while to take a journey to the sea. She finally arrives. The water is exactly as beautiful as she hoped. And yet, standing on the shore, she feels a thin thread of tension running underneath her pleasure. Some part of her is already counting the days until it ends. She is in the very place she dreamed of, and a quiet voice keeps whispering that it is slipping away. She has arrived, and she cannot quite land. And it happens with the things we work hardest for. A man receives the promotion he has wanted for years. For a moment, there is real gladness. But the moment is brief. Almost at once, his mind moves on to the new responsibilities, the next challenge, the next rung of the ladder. He pauses to enjoy his good fortune for only a breath before the reaching starts again. The success he chased for so long is handed to him, and he barely stops to hold it. There is a small drawing that captures this perfectly. It shows a dog asleep, deep in a dream. Above his head floats the bubble of what he is dreaming of. And inside the bubble is a bone. Not a great feast. Not a mountain of treasures. Just a single, ordinary, medium-sized bone. The caption reads, "Zen dog, dreaming of a medium-sized bone." There is something both funny and tender in this. The dog, even in his dreams, even in the one place where he could imagine anything at all, asks only for a little more than he has. His dream is not extravagant. It is just slightly bigger than his present. And in that, he is exactly like us. We rarely dream of having nothing to want. We dream of having a little more. A slightly better job, a slightly larger home, a relationship just a little more secure. The reaching is so constant that it slips even into our sleep. We cannot rest in what we have because some part of us is always quietly negotiating for the next size up. This is the near enemy at work. It does not feel like an enemy. It feels like ambition, like care, like simply wanting good things. And there is nothing wrong with wanting good things. But when the wanting never pauses, it becomes a thin wall between us and our own lives. We spend our days half a step ahead of the present, and we wonder why the present feels so empty. There is a difference here, worth understanding. A writer once said there are two ways to move through this world. One is to improve life. The other is to enjoy it. Now, there is real value in improving things. There are times to plan, to build, to mend what is broken, to work towards something better. The Buddha himself was endlessly practical. This is not a teaching against effort. There is a season for shaping our lives with care. But notice how lopsided we have become. Almost all our energy flows in one direction. We are forever adjusting, managing, arranging our experience to hold a little more pleasure and a little less pain. The improving mind never rests. It treats this moment as a problem to be solved, a thing to be made better before it can be accepted. And here is what is easy to miss. Enjoyment is not an act of improving. Enjoyment is a kind of not doing. It is the willingness to let a moment be exactly as it is and to be fully present with it without trying to change a single thing. You cannot improve your way into joy. You can only stop and receive what is already here. There is a teaching that says joy is rare and more difficult than sadness and more beautiful, and that once you truly understand this, you must treat the welcoming of joy almost as a duty, not because joy is owed to us, but because we so easily refuse it. We let it pass by, unreceived, while we hurry on to the next thing that needs fixing. To pause and actually take in the goodness of a moment is harder than it sounds and rarer than we think. So if you have ever felt that you do not experience much joy, consider that the problem may not be a lack of joy in your life. The moments are there. The warmth of sun on your skin, the face of someone you love, the quiet of an evening, the simple fact of being alive and breathing. They arrive all day long. The trouble is that we are usually somewhere else when they come. We are reaching past them toward a future that, when it arrives, we will also reach past. The way back is not complicated. It begins with noticing the reaching itself. The next time you find yourself rushing through a good moment toward the next one, you might simply pause and stay. Let the bite of food be tasted. Let the person in front of you be seen. Let the moment you have been waiting for actually be the moment you are in. Nothing needs to be added. You only need to stop reaching long enough to find that what you have been chasing was, much of the time, already in your hands. The Buddha had a word for the quality we are describing. He spoke often of contentment and called it one of the greatest forms of wealth a person can have. Not the contentment of someone who has everything, but the contentment of someone who has stopped needing everything. There is a line attributed to him that holds the whole of tonight's theme in a single breath. Health is the greatest gift. Contentment is the greatest wealth. Notice that he did not say, abundance is the greatest wealth, or success, or pleasure. He said contentment, the simple, settled fullness of a heart at rest. That fullness is always nearer than we think. It does not wait for our circumstances to improve. It waits only for us to stop reaching long enough to notice that, in this moment, we already have enough. Let us pause here for a moment. Notice how you are feeling, right now, with nothing to reach for. And when you are ready, we will continue together. A student once asked his teacher, "What is the secret of your peace?" The old monk replied, "When I am hungry, I eat. When I am tired, I sleep." The student frowned. "But everyone does that. How is it any different for you?" The monk smiled and said, "When most people eat, they are busy with 1,000 other things. When they sleep, they are not really sleeping. As for me, when I eat, I only eat. When I rest, I only rest." It sounds almost too simple. And yet hidden inside that small answer is the whole question of why contentment seems to slip through our fingers. We have already seen how restless grasping pulls us out of the moment. Now we come to something quieter, and in some ways, harder to notice. It is the steady, low whisper that life, as it is, right now, is not quite enough. This whisper is so much a part of us that we rarely think to question it. We treat it as the voice of good sense. But the Buddhist teachers saw it differently. They saw it as the very thing standing between us and the fullness we are looking for. There is a teaching the Buddha gave that goes straight to the heart of it. He said that a person who is not content is like someone who drinks salt water to quench his thirst. The more he drinks, the thirstier he becomes. Discontent does not lessen as we feed it. It grows. The Zen tradition has its own way of pointing at this. There is a saying that the entire universe is medicine, and yet we go on searching for what is wrong. Everything we need is already present, already given, and still the restless mind hunts for the missing piece, certain it is somewhere just out of reach. We stand in a world overflowing with what could nourish us, and we taste almost none of it, because our attention is fixed on the one thing we imagine we lack. The monks of the old forest traditions understood this in a way that puzzled the people around them. They owned almost nothing. A robe, a bowl, a place beneath the trees. And yet visitors who came to them often reported that these monks seemed more deeply at peace than the wealthy and the powerful. When asked how this could be, one of them is said to have answered that the wealthy were forever guarding what they had and reaching for more, while the monks, having set down both the guarding and the reaching, had finally become free to simply enjoy the morning light. Their happiness did not come from what they held. It came from how little stood between them and the present moment. There is a story that brings this teaching to life. Let us explore the tale of a poor cloth dyer who lived at the edge of a small town, in a plain house with a worn stone hearth. For 3 nights running, the same dream came to him. In it, he stood beneath a great stone bridge in a distant city he had never seen, and a voice told him that a treasure lay buried there, waiting for him. The dream was so vivid, so insistent, that on the 3rd morning he could ignore it no longer. He packed a little food, said farewell to his neighbors, and set out on the long road toward the far city. He walked for many days. His sandals wore thin, and his feet grew sore. He crossed rivers and dry plains, slept under hedges, and ate sparingly. At last he came to the great city of his dream, and there, exactly as he had seen it, stood the enormous stone bridge arching over the river. His heart leapt. But the bridge was busy day and night, crossed by guards and merchants and travelers, and he could not very well begin digging beneath it in plain view. So for several days he simply lingered there, watching, waiting for a quiet hour that never seemed to come. A guard who patrolled the bridge began to notice the ragged stranger loitering day after day, and finally approached him. "You have been hovering about this bridge for days," the guard said, not unkindly. "What is your business here?" The dyer was an honest man, and he saw no harm in telling the truth. He explained the dream, the voice, the treasure he believed lay buried beneath the stones. The guard threw back his head and laughed. "A dream sent you all this way? My poor fellow, only a fool puts his faith in dreams. Why, if I was so foolish, I would be off on a journey of my own this very moment. For 3 nights I too have had a dream. A voice keeps telling me that in some little town I have never visited, in the house of a humble cloth dyer, there is a great treasure buried beneath the old stone hearth." He laughed again and shook his head. "Can you imagine? Chasing across the world to dig up some stranger's fireplace. I would not waste a single afternoon on such nonsense." The dyer stood very still. The guard had just described in perfect detail his own house, his own hearth, the very stones he had warmed himself beside every night of his life. He thanked the guard, said nothing of what he understood, and began the long walk home. And when at last he reached his own plain house and lifted the stones of his own worn hearth, he found there a treasure greater than anything he had dreamed of, resting in the very spot where he had slept and eaten and lived all his days. The treasure had been beneath him the entire time. He had to walk to the ends of the earth and back to learn how to see what was already home. This is the strange shape of so much of our searching. We are convinced that what would make us whole lies somewhere far off, in a city we have not yet reached, a life we have not yet built. So we set out, straining toward the distant bridge, and overlook the ground beneath our own feet. The fullness we are seeking is rarely in another place. More often it waits here, in the very life we already have. Think of how much of it passes unnoticed. The warmth of a cup held in both hands on a cold morning. A patch of afternoon light resting on the floor. The first clean breath of air after rain. The sound of someone you love moving about in the next room. The body finally lying down at the end of a long day. None of these announce themselves. And yet, received fully, each one holds a sweetness that asks for nothing more. We keep waiting for the mountain peak and miss the wide green valley we are already standing in. So what keeps us from resting in that valley? More than anything, it is a single voice that follows us everywhere. It says, "Not yet. Not yet. Not quite. Almost, but something is still missing. When that something arrives, then you can rest. Then you can be happy." This voice is patient and tireless. It does not argue with us loudly. It simply moves the finish line, again and again, just out of reach. And because it speaks so reasonably, we rarely think to question it. Let us look at how it works in an ordinary life. Imagine a woman who has just begun a new relationship, one she is genuinely happy about. From the very first meeting, there is warmth between them. And yet, even in those early days, her mind is already busy with the next thing. Is this going somewhere? Will it last? At each stage, instead of resting in the goodness right in front of her, she leans forward into a question about what comes next. When they grow closer, she wonders when the deeper commitment will come. When that arrives, she wonders about the one after that. The relationship is good at every step, but she can never quite be in it, because part of her is always one chapter ahead, waiting for the moment it finally becomes enough. We do this everywhere. The student waits to finish school. Then the graduate waits to find work. Then comes waiting for the better position, the home, the family, the security. And at each arrival, after the briefest pause, the voice resumes. Not yet. There is still something more. Always something more. There is a quiet sorrow in this, when you see it clearly. We spend our whole lives preparing to live. We treat the present as a waiting room for a future that, when it comes, simply becomes another waiting room. The Buddha pointed directly at this. He taught that craving, this endless thirst for things to be other than they are, is the very root of our suffering. Not because wanting things is wicked, but because a thirst that can never be satisfied leaves us forever parched, even while we are standing in the rain. There is an old story that touches this gently. Let us explore the tale of a poet who lived in a beautiful old capital city, a place travelers crossed great distances to see. The city was famous for its gardens, its temples, its soft mountain air. People came from everywhere just to spend a single season there. And yet the poet, who lived there all year long, was restless. One evening, sitting in the very heart of that lovely city, listening to a bird calling somewhere in the trees, he felt a deep ache of longing rise up in him. He longed for the city. He missed it. He yearned to be there. But he was already there. He sat in the middle of the very place he was longing for, and still his heart reached for it as though it were somewhere far away. When he understood what had happened, he laughed at himself, softly. He saw that the longing had become a habit so deep that it no longer needed an object. His mind had learned to reach, and so it reached, even for the thing it already had. He was homesick for a home he had never left. That evening he wrote a few simple lines about it, and they have lasted far longer than he ever imagined, because nearly everyone who reads them recognizes something of themselves. We are forever longing for what is already here, looking past the present moment toward a version of it that lives only in our wanting. It helps to be clear about what kind of joy we are actually looking for, because the not yet voice has slowly shaped our idea of it. Most of us picture joy as something rare and overwhelming, a burst of feeling so strong it lifts us off the ground. And because we are waiting for that, we walk right past the gentler thing that is available nearly all the time. The joy the Buddha pointed to is not loud. It is closer to a deep settling, a fullness that asks for nothing more. It is the ease that arrives when the wanting finally goes still. We could call it ease, or peace, or simply the sense of enough. Because it is soft rather than dramatic, we overlook it again and again, convinced that real joy must be somewhere louder, somewhere ahead. This is why the chase is so misguided. We are searching, at great effort, for a fireworks display, while the steady warmth of a hearth glows unnoticed beside us. The peak we imagine is rare precisely because it is rare. The fullness that is actually our nature is available now, and now, and now. The teachers of the Zen tradition like to say that the ordinary mind, just as it is the way. There is no need to manufacture some extraordinary state. We need only stop overlooking the richness of the life already in front of us. The cure for this is not to want nothing. It is gentler than that. It is simply to notice, now and then, that the moment you are in might already be complete. There is a word the Buddhist tradition returns to again and again. In the old language, it is called santuti, contentment. The Buddha placed it among the highest forms of happiness a person can know, and he was careful about what he meant. He did not mean the contentment of someone who has finally gotten everything they wanted. That kind of satisfaction never lasts, because the wanting always returns. He meant something deeper and steadier. The contentment of a heart that has stopped insisting the present be different before it can be at peace. This is not the same as giving up. You can still care for your life, still tend it, still hope. But underneath the hoping, there can be a steady floor of enough. A sense that even now, before anything changes, you are not actually missing anything you need in order to be at peace. There is a saying often connected to the Zen tradition. The whole moon and the entire sky are reflected in one dewdrop on the grass. A single drop of dew holds the whole sky. It does not need to be larger to be complete. It is already full. And so is this moment, if we would only stop leaning past it. You might try something the next time you notice that voice whispering, "Not yet." Rather than arguing with it, simply pause and ask, very gently, what is actually missing right now, in this exact moment? Not in an hour, not next year, right now. Often you will find that in this present moment, nothing real is missing at all. There is breath. There is warmth. There is the soft fact of being alive and aware. The lack we feel is almost never about the present. It lives in the story we tell about a future that is not yet here. The ground of enough is always beneath your feet. It does not need to be earned or arranged. It only needs to be noticed. And in the noticing, the reaching settles, and a fullness rises that was waiting there all along. Let us pause here a moment together. Let the breath slow on its own. Feel, just for now, that nothing needs to be added. And in your own time, we will go on. Of all the qualities the Buddha praised, there is one that sounds, at first, almost effortless. It is called mudita, and it means sympathetic joy, the simple gladness we feel when something good happens to another person. It is the joy we take in their joy. The Buddhist teachers placed it among the four most beautiful states a human heart can know, right beside loving kindness and compassion. They taught that a heart trained in these four qualities becomes boundless, like the open sky, with room for the happiness of every living being. It sounds easy. Surely it is no great labor to be happy when someone we care about is happy. And yet, if we are honest, we discover something uncomfortable. This particular joy is often the hardest of all to feel. There is an old observation, attributed to a thinker who lived many centuries ago, that is so honest it stings a little. He admitted that in the misfortunes of even our closest friends, there is sometimes something that does not entirely displease us. It is hard to hear, because we sense the truth in it. When someone near us stumbles, some small and unwelcome part of us is not entirely sorry. And the reverse can be just as troubling. When good fortune comes to someone close, when they receive the very thing we have been hoping for in our own lives, our congratulations can be warm on the surface, while something underneath tightens. This is not because we are bad people. The Buddha saw the cause of it very clearly. When we feel that we ourselves are lacking, When we carry a sense that there is not enough to go around, then another person's gain can feel, strangely, like our own loss. As if happiness were a single loaf of bread, and every slice given to someone else were a slice taken from us. And so the healing of this difficulty begins with the healing of that one mistaken feeling, the fear that there is not enough, until the good fortune of others becomes a source of joy rather than a source of pain. There is a tender old story that shows what becomes possible when that fear has fallen away entirely. Let us explore the tale of two brothers who farmed neighboring fields in a wide valley between the hills. The elder brother had a wife and many children, a busy and crowded home. The younger brother lived alone. When the harvest came, the two of them divided the grain equally, half to each, as they had done every year for as long as they could remember. That night, the younger brother lay in bed and thought of his elder brother. "He has so many mouths to feed," he said to himself, "and I have only myself. It is not right that we should take the same share." So he rose in the dark, gathered a portion of his own grain, and carried it quietly across the fields to add to his brother's store, telling no one. At that very hour, the elder brother lay awake thinking of the younger. "My brother lives alone," he thought. "He has no children to look after him when he is old, no family to gather around his table. He needs more than I do to provide for the years ahead." And so he too rose in the dark, gathered some of his own grain, and carried it across to his brother's store, telling no one. In the morning, both men were puzzled to find their own stores undiminished. Neither said a word. And so the next night, each rose again and carried more across the fields. The night after, they did the same. Each was amazed that his pile never seemed to shrink, and each kept his secret, until one night, halfway across the moonlit ground, the two brothers met, each with his arms full of grain, meant for the other. They stood for a moment in the silver light, and all at once they understood everything. They set down their heavy bundles and embraced, laughing softly, two men who had each been creeping out in the dark to make sure the other had enough. There was no envy anywhere in that field, no measuring, no counting of shares. There was only the wish, in each heart, that the other might be well. It is said that the place where they met was honored ever after as a blessed spot, because something sacred had happened there. Two hearts had each been made glad by the good of another. That is mudita in its purest form. Not a grudging tolerance of someone else's good fortune, but a heart so free of fear that another's well-being becomes its own midnight errand. Most of us, though, do not begin there. We begin somewhere more tangled, and it helps to look honestly at how that knot feels from the inside. Let us explore a story about a healer who moved to a new town to begin her life again. She had practiced her craft for years in the city of her birth, and she was good at it. But circumstances called her far away, to a distant town where no one knew her name, and she had to begin once more from nothing. She worried a great deal. Would people come to her? Could she make a living among strangers? Each slow day deepened her fear. In that same town lived another healer, a woman who had arrived only a little earlier and whose practice was already flourishing. People spoke of her warmly. Her doorway was busy from morning until dusk. Whenever the two women met, the successful one would gladly share her news. 3 new families came to me this week, she would say, her face bright. I can hardly keep up. The newcomer would smile and nod and offer kind words. How wonderful, she would say. I am so glad for you. But inside, with every report of the other woman's success, something in her sank a little lower. She felt a tightness she was ashamed of. She did not wish her neighbor any harm. She simply could not find, anywhere in her heart, a true and easy gladness for her. One evening, alone, she sat with the discomfort and asked herself plainly, "What is wrong with me? Why can I not be happy for her?" As she sat with the question, the answer came, soft and clear. There was nothing wrong with her at all. The tightness was not cruelty. It was fear. It was the ache of her own uncertainty, the worry that there might not be enough good fortune in this town to reach her too. Her neighbor's full doorway frightened her because it seemed to say that the bread was being eaten and her share might be gone before she ever got to the table. When she saw this clearly, something eased. She understood that her envy was not the mark of a hard heart. It was a signpost, pointing exactly to the place where she felt most afraid and most unsure of herself. Once she could see the fear plainly, it began to loosen its grip. Envy visits all of us, and it tends to arrive with a heavy load of shame. We feel it, and then we judge ourselves harshly for feeling it, and the judgment only pulls the knot tighter. But envy is not a moral failing. It is information. Wherever we feel we are lacking, that is exactly where envy will appear. If we feel unsure about our appearance, we will envy those who seem at ease in theirs. If we feel uncertain about our talents, we will envy those whose gifts seem to shine without effort. If we worry about money, or love, or our place in the world, envy will rise in precisely those corners. It is a lamp held up to the dim places inside us, showing us where we still feel poor. Seen this way, envy loses much of its sting. It stops being proof that we are unkind and becomes instead a gentle teacher, pointing to the spots that still need our care. The Buddha taught that the root of so much suffering is this very sense of a separate, lacking self, forever measuring itself against others, forever afraid there will not be enough. Sympathetic joy is the medicine for that ache. But the medicine cannot be forced. It grows on its own as the underlying fear begins to heal. The Buddhist teachers had a clear eye for what stands in the way of this joy. They spoke of comparison as one of the great thieves of peace. A mind that is always measuring, always asking whether it has more or less than the person beside it, can never rest, because there is always someone with more. The only comparison truly worth making, they said, is between the person you were yesterday and the person you are today. Set against others, you will always feel either proud or poor. Set against your own path, you can simply keep growing, at ease. The healing, when it comes, happens almost by itself, once we stop fighting the fear and simply understand it. When the healer in our story saw that her envy was only fear wearing a mask, she did not have to wrestle her heart into feeling glad. The understanding itself softened her. Over time, as her own practice took root and her fear eased, she found that her neighbor's good news no longer pinched. She could hear it and feel, at last, a real warmth. The bread, she discovered, had never been a single loaf. There was enough. There had always been enough. This is the secret hidden inside sympathetic joy. It is not a separate thing we must labor to produce. It is what naturally arises when we no longer feel that another's fullness threatens our own. A heart that feels secure in its own enough has no trouble delighting in the good fortune of others. And it finds a wonderful expansion in doing so. When we can take joy in another's happiness, we are no longer limited to the small portion of good that happens to fall to us alone. We get to share in the gladness of everyone around us. The joys of the whole world become, in part, our own. There is a beautiful image that one candle loses nothing of its own light by lighting another. The flame is not diminished. If anything, the room grows brighter, and the first candle burns on, exactly as warm as before. This is what opens up when the fear of scarcity falls away. We can light 100 flames from our own and lose nothing, and find ourselves standing in a room far warmer than we could ever have made alone. A heart like this carries the soft, easy smile of the Buddha in the old statues, the half smile of one who has nothing to guard and nothing to fear, and so can delight freely in the good of all. So if you notice that tightening when good fortune comes to someone else, you need not scold yourself for it. You might simply pause and look gently underneath the feeling, the way you would lift a stone to see what shelters beneath it. Almost always you will find some small fear there, some worry that you yourself do not have enough. Meet that fear kindly. It is only asking to be reassured. And as you tend to it with patience, you may find that your heart slowly opens until the happiness of others begins to feel less like a threat and more like a gift offered freely to you. Let us pause here and breathe softly for a moment. Notice whatever is present without needing to change it. We will go on together soon. We have looked at how hard it can be to feel glad for the good fortune of others. But there is a stranger difficulty still, one that runs even deeper and hides even better. It is the trouble many of us have in letting ourselves be happy at all. It sounds almost absurd when you say it plainly. Who would refuse their own happiness? And yet, watch closely, and you will see it everywhere. A good thing arrives. A moment of real sweetness opens up, and something in us flinches. We hold the joy at arm's length. We brace, as though gladness were a debt that would soon come due. There is a teaching at the very heart of Buddhism that speaks directly to this. In the practice of loving kindness, the Buddha taught that we are each worthy of our own love and care, as worthy as any being in the whole of existence. He did not say we must first earn it. He did not say we must become better, or wait until we have proven ourselves, or settle some debt, before we are allowed to be at peace. He said the worthiness is already there, woven into us, simply because we are alive and aware. In one of his teachings he put it plainly, searching the entire world, you will not find anyone more deserving of your love than yourself. It is a startling thing to hear, because so few of us believe it. For there is a story that after his awakening, the Buddha was met on the road by a traveler who saw at once that there was something different about him, a radiance, a stillness. The traveler asked, "Are you a god?" The Buddha said no. "Are you some kind of spirit or a magician?" Again he said no. "Then what are you?" the traveler asked. The Buddha answered simply, "I am awake." He had not become something other than human. He had not been singled out by fortune. He had only woken up to what was already true, the fullness and freedom that had been his nature all along. And the tradition holds that this same awakening is the birthright of every person. Not a reward handed to the deserving few, but the natural condition of a heart that has stopped believing it is unworthy. And still, so many of us carry the opposite belief, buried so deep we hardly know it is there. The belief that we are not quite worthy, that happiness belongs to other people, the ones who have done more, suffered less, somehow gotten it right. We treat joy like a room we are not allowed to enter, and we linger in the doorway, certain someone will appear at any moment to tell us we do not belong inside. This belief wears several disguises. For some it sounds like, if I let myself be too happy now, something bad will surely follow. As though joy and sorrow were tied together on a string, and to pull one toward us were to drag the other along behind it. For others, it whispers, I have not done enough to deserve this. And for others still, there is a superstition older than memory, the sense that too much of a good thing is dangerous, that to feel full and content is to tempt some unseen force to take it all away. So we ration our own joy. We allow ourselves a small taste, then quickly close the cupboard. We refuse the very thing we have been longing for, not because it is not offered, but because some old voice tells us we are not meant to have it. There is a story from the Sufi tradition that points to this with great tenderness. Let us explore the tale of a woman who spent her whole life searching for a single miraculous fruit. She had heard, when she was young, of a wondrous tree that grew somewhere in the world. Its fruit, it was said, granted whoever tasted it a deep and immediate peace, an end to all seeking. From that day, finding the tree became the one purpose of her life. In her village lived a gentle teacher, a man known for his stillness and his kindness. She went to him first and asked, "Do you know where I might find the tree that bears the fruit of peace?" The teacher looked at her for a long moment and said, "You would do well to stay here and study with me. What you are looking for is closer than you think." But she was young and full of fire, and his answer seemed far too simple. Surely a treasure so great could not be found in her own small village, sitting at the feet of an ordinary teacher. So she thanked him and set out into the wide world to search. And search she did. She journeyed for many years. She crossed deserts and mountains. She sought out wise men and women in distant lands, sat with scholars, with sages, with hermits in their caves. Each one taught her something, and yet none of them had the fruit she sought. Always it seemed to lie just beyond the next horizon, with the next teacher, in the next far-off place. The years passed, and then the decades. Her hair turned silver. Her steps grew slower. And still she wandered, certain that the tree was out there somewhere, certain she had simply not yet looked in the right place. At last, old and weary, she came upon a beautiful garden she had never seen before. And there, in the middle of it, stood the tree, exactly as it had been described to her so long ago, its branches heavy with glowing fruit. Her heart nearly burst. After a lifetime of searching, she had found it. And standing beside the tree, calm and smiling, was the very teacher from her own village, the gentle man she had left behind all those years ago. She could hardly speak. "You," she said. "How can it be you? And why? Why did you not tell me, on that very first day, that you were the keeper of this tree?" The teacher smiled gently. "Because you would not have believed me," he said. "On that morning, your heart was not ready to receive something so freely given. You were certain that anything truly precious must be far away and hard to win and earned through great struggle. You could not yet accept that what you longed for was already near, already offered, waiting only for you to reach out your hand. You needed all those years of searching, not to find the tree, but to become someone who could finally believe it was yours to taste. This is the quiet tragedy that so many of us live without knowing it. The peace we long for, the joy, the sense of being whole, these are not withheld from us by the world. They are offered freely, again and again. But we cannot believe they are meant for us. We are sure that something so good must require more suffering first, more proof, more waiting. And so we walk past the open hand, year after year, searching far away for what was always being held out to us, near enough to touch. For some, this disbelief takes another shape. It is not that they feel unworthy of joy, exactly, but that they are afraid of it. They have come to believe that happiness is dangerous, that every gladness must be paid for with sorrow, and so they refuse to let any of it in. Let us explore a story about a potter who lived in an ancient town, a man whose work was admired throughout the region, and who had a loving family and a comfortable home. By any measure, his life was good, and yet he could never rest in it. Each time something wonderful happened, a fine commission, a joyful gathering, a season of good health, he would grow uneasy rather than glad. He had come to believe, somewhere along the way, that happiness was always followed by misfortune, that the higher his spirits rose, the harder fate would strike to bring them down. So whenever joy arrived, he would brace himself, waiting for the blow he was sure must follow. His unease grew so heavy that he went at last to a wise old nun who lived in a hermitage at the edge of the town, hoping she could teach him how to guard against the disasters he felt always looming. He told her everything, how he could not enjoy his good fortune, how every happiness felt like the front edge of a coming sorrow. "Teach me," he begged, "how to protect myself, so that I am not caught off guard when the misfortune comes." The nun listened kindly, and then she asked him a simple question. "In all these years of bracing yourself," she said, "how much misfortune has actually come?" The potter paused. He thought back over his life. There had been hard times, of course, as there are in every life, but far fewer than he had feared. And none of them, he realized, had ever been softened in the slightest by his worrying. "And in all these years of waiting for sorrow," she went on, "how much joy have you let slip past untasted, because you were too busy bracing for a blow that never landed?" At this, the potter fell silent, for he saw that the answer was nearly all of it. He had spent his whole life so braced against the misfortune that might come, that he had never once received the happiness that did come. The blows he feared had mostly stayed away. But the joy had been there all along, and he had refused it at the door, every single time. "The sorrow you fear may come, or it may not," the nun told him gently. "That is not yours to control. But the joy in front of you is real, and it is here now. To turn from it in order to brace for a sorrow that has not arrived is to lose what you have for the sake of what you only imagine. Receive the gladness while it is here. When sorrow comes, you will meet it then, with a heart made stronger by all the joy you allowed yourself along the way." The potter walked home that evening lighter than he had felt in years. And though he could not undo the habit overnight, he began, little by little, to let himself simply enjoy what was good, without standing guard over it. Underneath the potter's fear was a truth he had misunderstood. The Buddha taught that this whole world is marked by impermanence. Everything changes. Everything passes. The pleasant moment will end, and so will the unpleasant one. Now, we might hear this and feel sad, and use it as one more reason to brace against joy. If it will only end, why let it in at all? But the teaching points the other way entirely. Precisely because each good moment is fleeting, it deserves to be received fully while it is here. To hold back from a joy because it will not last is to lose it twice, once in the bracing and once in the ending. To open to it completely is to truly have it, for as long as it is given. There is an old understanding in the Zen tradition that the cherry blossom is precious because it falls. Its beauty and its brevity are not two separate things. The blossom is lovely not in spite of the fact that it will soon drift to the ground, but in part because of it. And the same is true of every sweet moment in a human life. Its passing does not make it worthless. Its passing is exactly why it is worth our whole attention now. So when a moment of happiness arrives, the invitation is simply to receive it, the way the open hand receives, rather than the closed fist that clutches. In Buddhism, joy is not something we seize or earn. It is one of the natural fruits of a heart that has stopped defending itself. The Buddha taught his students to dwell in gladness, to let well-being soak into the body and mind like rain into dry earth, holding nothing back. This was not indulgence. It was understood as nourishment for the path, a way of meeting life that softens the heart and steadies it. The bracing, the earning, the waiting until we feel we deserve it. All of this is just the grasping mind in another disguise, certain it must do something before it is allowed to be at peace. But the worthiness was never in question, and the permission was never required. When a sweetness comes, we can let it move through us fully and let it pass when it passes, neither clinging to it nor turning it away. That open and untroubled receiving is itself a kind of awakening, small and ordinary, repeated as often as life offers us something good. Let the breath settle now, soft and unhurried. Allow this moment to be just as it is, with nothing held back. When you are ready, we will go on together. There is a kind of weight that many of us carry without ever naming it. It is the weight of old grievances, the slights we have not forgiven, the wrongs we still rehearse, the resentments we have held so long they feel like part of us. We carry them quietly through our days, and we wonder why the heart feels so heavy, why joy seems to find no room in us. A Zen teacher once said that holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intention of throwing it at someone else. We are the ones who get burned. The person we are angry with may be far away, may have forgotten the whole matter, may not even know we are upset. And yet we go on clutching the coal, day after day, harming no one but ourselves. The Buddha understood that an unforgiving heart cannot be a happy one. The two simply cannot live in the same place. When we hold tightly to a grievance, some part of us stays clenched around it, like a fist that has forgotten how to open. And a clenched fist cannot receive anything. It cannot feel the warmth of the present moment, because it is still gripping the past. This is why one teacher said something that, at first, sounds almost impossible. She said that our inability to feel joy is a direct reflection of our inability to forgive. The connection is closer than we might think. Every grudge we hold is a place where we are still arguing with what happened. We are insisting, somewhere inside, that the past should have been different. And joy cannot enter a heart that is busy fighting a battle that is already over. There is a definition of forgiveness that opens this up beautifully. Forgiveness, it has been said, is giving up all hope for a better past. Sit with how much of our suffering lives in exactly that hope. We replay the moment when we were wronged. We imagine how it should have gone instead. We compose the words we wish we had said, the apology we are still waiting to receive, the version of events in which everything turned out as it should have. We spend enormous energy wishing the past were other than it is. And the past, of course, does not change. It cannot. It is the one thing in all the universe that is utterly beyond our power to alter. Forgiveness is not saying that what happened was acceptable. It is not pretending we were not hurt or that the wrong did not matter. It is something quieter and far more freeing. It is the moment we finally stop demanding that the past be different. We set down the hope that it could have gone another way, and in setting it down, we are free at last to live in the present, which is the only place where joy has ever been found. There is a story that shows how heavy this burden can become and how light we feel when we finally lay it down. Let us explore the tale of two travelers, an older monk and a younger one, walking together along a muddy road after heavy rains. They came to a place where the road crossed a swollen stream, and there at the water's edge stood a young woman in fine clothing, unable to cross without ruining her garments and perhaps being swept off her feet by the current. She was distressed, unsure what to do. Without a word, the older monk lifted her gently, carried her across the rushing water, set her down safely on the far bank, and continued on his way. The young woman thanked him warmly and went on toward her home. The two monks walked on in silence. But the younger one was troubled. Their order had strict rules about such things. Monks were not even to touch a woman, let alone lift one into their arms. He stewed over it, mile after mile. An hour passed. Then two. He grew more and more agitated, replaying the scene, certain his companion had done something terribly wrong. At last, when they were nearly home, he could hold it no longer. "How could you do that?" He burst out. "You know our rules. We are not permitted to touch a woman, and yet you picked her up and carried her in your arms. How could you behave so?" The older monk looked at him with mild surprise, and then a gentle smile crossed his face. "I set that woman down at the edge of the stream many hours ago," he said. "Why are you still carrying her?" We are all, so often, the younger monk. We set down nothing. We pick up a hurt, a slight, a moment that did not go as we wished, and we carry it for hours, for years, sometimes for the rest of our lives. The event itself was over in a moment, but we keep it alive, hauling it down every road we walk, letting it weigh on us long after the other person has moved on. The older monk shows us another way. He acted, he helped, and then he let the moment go completely. He did not carry it. He did not turn it over and over in his mind. When it was finished, and his heart was free and light, ready to receive the next moment and the next. This is the freedom that forgiveness offers. Not the freedom to change what happened, which we never have, but the freedom to stop carrying it. To set the burden down at the water's edge and walk on unweighted. There is another story from an old mountain village that shows what a grudge can do to the one who holds it and what happens when it is finally released. Two craftsmen had once been the closest of friends. They had grown up together, learned their trade side by side, and shared every joy and hardship of their early years. But a disagreement arose between them over a piece of work. Sharp words were spoken, and a bitterness took root. From that day, the two men did not speak. They lived in the same village, passed each other in the market, and looked away. Years went by like this. One of the men, as he grew older, found that the bitterness had spread through his whole life. He thought of the quarrel constantly. He rehearsed his grievance to anyone who would listen. The anger had become so much a part of him that he hardly remembered who he had been before it. His sleep was poor. His face had grown hard. And though he blamed his old friend for all of it, the truth was that his former friend lived quite peacefully on the other side of the village, having long since let the matter go. One evening, this man went to a temple in the hills, seeking some relief from the heaviness he carried. He poured out the whole story to the monk who tended the temple, every detail of the wrong done to him so many years before. The monk listened, and when the man had finished, he asked, "How long ago did this quarrel happen?" "More than 20 years ago," the man said. The monk nodded slowly. "And for 20 years, he said, you have carried this man with you everywhere you go. You wake with him. You eat with him. You lie down with him at night. Tell me, in all that time, where has your old friend been carrying you?" The man had no answer. "You believe you are punishing him with your anger," the monk went on. "But he set this down 20 years ago and has been living in peace ever since. The only person you have been punishing all this time is yourself. The quarrel ended long ago. You are the only one who has kept it alive, and it has cost you 20 years of your own happiness." The man sat with this for a long while, and something in him, worn thin by all those years of carrying, finally gave way. He saw that the bitterness had never touched his old friend at all. It had only hollowed out his own life. The next morning, for the first time in 2 decades, he walked across the village, approached his old friend, and spoke to him. The two old men wept, and the weight that one of them had carried for 20 years simply dissolved, as though it had never had any substance at all. What remained was the friendship that had been waiting underneath the bitterness the whole time. The Buddhist tradition speaks of this releasing as a great kindness, and the first person it blesses is always the one who lets go. There is a teaching that you will not be punished for your anger. You will be punished by your anger. The resentment we nurse does its damage to us, in our own chest, in our own sleepless nights, long before it ever reaches the one we are angry with. To forgive, then, is not mainly a gift we give to another. It is a gift we give to ourselves. It is the act of finally setting ourselves free. And there is something even gentler underneath all of this, which the practice of acceptance points toward. The heart that learns to forgive learns, more and more, to meet the whole of life with a single open response, this too. Whatever arises, pleasant or painful, expected or unwished for, the heart learns to say, softly, this too belongs. This too can be met. This too can be held. And a heart that can say this too to everything has dissolved the wall between itself and its own life. Nothing is left outside. And where nothing is shut out, joy has room at last to move freely. This is the gentle ease behind the half smile of the Buddha, the look of a heart that has stopped fighting with what is, and so has nothing left to forgive. So if there is some old grievance you have been carrying, some hope for a better past that you have been clutching without quite realizing it, you might consider, very gently, whether you are ready to set it down. Not for the sake of the one who wronged you, for your own sake, for the lightness it would bring to your own heart. The burden has been yours to carry, and it is yours to lay down whenever you choose. And the moment you do, you may be surprised how much room opens up inside you, room that joy will quietly come to fill. Let us take a slow breath together now. Feel whatever you are ready to release, and let it begin to soften. We will continue on in a moment. So far we have looked at the obstacles that announce themselves, the grasping, the envy, the bracing against happiness, the grudges we will not release. These are loud enough that, once pointed out, we can recognize them. But there is one obstacle so subtle, so woven into the fabric of an ordinary day, that most of us never notice it at all. It is not a strong emotion. It is not resistance. It is simply this, that we are rarely here. The Buddhist teachers had a phrase for the ordinary state of the human mind. They called it the monkey mind, forever swinging from one branch to the next, never still, never content to rest where it is. It leaps from a memory to a worry, from a plan to a regret, from something that was said this morning to something that might happen next week. And while the mind is off swinging through these branches, life itself, the actual life happening right in front of us, goes on largely unattended. Think of how a typical hour passes. We are washing a bowl, but we are not really washing the bowl. In our minds, we are rehearsing a conversation we need to have, or replaying one that did not go well. We are walking down a road, but we do not see the road. We are somewhere else entirely, lost in thought, and our feet carry us along without us. We arrive at our destination with no memory of the journey, because we were never really on it. This is the strange condition of so much of our lives. We are present in body, going through the motions, while our attention lives almost entirely in a world of thought, a world of memory and anticipation that has very little to do with the moment we are actually in. We are here and not here at the same time. There is an image that captures this well. Imagine someone standing at a window, looking out at a garden where a celebration is taking place. There is music, laughter, people moving together in the warm evening light. The person at the window can see all of it, but there is glass between them and the gathering. They are watching, observing, taking it in, and yet they are not in it. They do not feel the warmth of the air or the touch of another's hand. They are a spectator of a life going on just on the other side of the glass. For many of us, that pane of glass is made of thought. We move through our days watching our own lives unfold, narrating them, commenting on them, analyzing them, but rarely stepping through into the direct, living experience itself. We taste our food through a film of distraction. We hold those we love while half our mind is elsewhere. We are present at the celebration of our own life, and we are watching it through a window. What does this cost us? It costs us the thing we have been looking for all along. There is a kind of magic in being fully present, a richness and aliveness that is available in even the most ordinary moment. But that magic can only be felt directly. It cannot be observed from behind the glass. The moment we step back to think about an experience, to label it, to turn it into a story about ourselves, we have already left the experience behind. We are no longer tasting the tea. We are thinking about tasting the tea, which is a thin and bloodless thing by comparison. Consider how this plays out in love, which is perhaps where it costs us the most. Let us explore the situation of a young man who longed, more than anything, to find love. He thought about it constantly. He imagined what it would be like, rehearsed conversations with a person he had not yet met, pictured the life he might one day share with someone. His mind was full of love, morning to night. And yet, when he looked back honestly over a stretch of his life, he made a startling discovery. He had spent far more of his hours imagining love, thinking about love, longing for love, than he had ever spent actually loving anyone. The real moments of connection, when they came, were often crowded out by his thinking. Even when he was with someone, part of him was standing back, assessing, wondering whether this was the right person, whether it was going well, whether it would last. He was so busy thinking about love that he kept missing the love that was right in front of him. This is the quiet cost. We spend our lives one step removed from the very things we most want. We think about joy more than we let ourselves feel it. We plan for connection more than we allow ourselves to connect. We rehearse our lives in our minds instead of living them, and then we wonder why, for all our thinking, we feel so strangely unfulfilled. There is a story that shows how easily a whole life can slip by in this way, and how simply we can be called back. Let us explore the tale of a learned scholar who traveled a great distance to study, with a hermit said to possess a rare and peaceful wisdom. The scholar arrived full of questions. He had read a great deal and thought a great deal, and his mind was always working, turning ideas over, comparing one teaching to another. He expected the hermit to live surrounded by sacred texts and to spend his days in deep philosophical discussion. Instead, he found an old man tending a small garden on a sunlit hillside, doing nothing in particular, perfectly content. "I have come a long way to learn from you," the scholar said. "Teach me the secret of the peace you are said to have found. What great truth have you understood that I have not?" The hermit smiled and invited him to stay a few days. But each time the scholar tried to begin a lofty discussion, the hermit would only ask him to help with some simple task. "Come, let us carry water from the spring," he would say. Or, "The beans are ready to be picked." The scholar grew frustrated. He had not traveled all this way to fetch water and pick beans. On the third morning, the two of them sat together on the hillside as the sun came up. The scholar, impatient, opened his mouth to press his questions once more. But before he could speak, the hermit gently raised a hand. "In the 3 days you have been here," the hermit said, "have you noticed the plum tree by the gate?" The scholar paused. "I suppose I walked past it," he said. "It has been in full blossom the whole time you have been with me," the hermit said. "Every morning its scent has filled the air around us. Did you smell it even once?" The scholar could not say that he had. "And the spring where we drew water," the hermit went on. "Did you hear how it sings as it comes out of the rock? Or feel how cold and sweet the water was in your hands?" Again, the scholar was silent. He had carried the water, but he had been so deep in his own thoughts, so busy composing his next question, that he had felt none of it. The hermit nodded, not unkindly. "You came here seeking a great and hidden truth," he said. But there is no hidden truth. There is only this: the blossom by the gate, the song of the spring, the warmth of this sun on our faces right now. While you have been lost in your thinking, searching for some far-off wisdom, life itself has been here all along, offering itself to you freely, and you have walked straight through it without once stopping to notice. The peace you are looking for is not at the end of a long chain of thought. It is here, in the very moment you keep skipping over on your way to the next idea. The scholar sat very still, and slowly, for the first time since he had arrived, he stopped reaching for his next question. He felt the warmth of the sun on his skin. He caught, at last, the faint sweetness of the plum blossom drifting on the morning air. He heard the spring singing softly below them. And in that simple, unguarded moment, with no thought in his mind at all, a quiet happiness welled up in him that all his years of study had never once provided. He had crossed a great distance to find wisdom, and the old man had given it to him in a single morning. Be here for the life that is here. The Buddha pointed to this again and again. He taught that the past is already gone and the future has not yet come, and that there is only one moment in which we can ever truly be alive, and that is this one. There is a teaching of his that says, do not chase after the past, do not lose yourself in the future. The past is no longer, the future not yet arrived. Look deeply at life as it is, right here, right now. This was not a small or poetic suggestion. It was a pointing at the only doorway through which a real life can be entered. For the mind that lives in thought is always living in a kind of ghost world. The past it broods over exists only as memory, a reconstruction, often inaccurate, of something already vanished. The future it worries about exists only as imagination, a story we tell about events that have not happened and mostly never will. Both are insubstantial. Neither can be touched or tasted or held. Only this present moment is solid. Only here is there warmth, breath, the actual texture of being alive. And it is precisely this present moment that the wandering mind keeps skipping over on its way to somewhere that does not exist. There is a well-known exchange in the Zen tradition in which a student asks a master to write down the highest wisdom. The master takes up the brush and writes a single word, attention. The student, unsatisfied, asks him to write more. So the master writes the same word twice, attention. Attention. The student, growing irritated, demands to know what these words could possibly mean. And the master answers simply, attention means attention. There was nothing more to add. The whole of the path, the master was saying, comes down to this, actually being here, awake, for the life that is happening now. None of this requires great effort. It is gentler than that. It is less about doing something new and more about simply noticing, now and then, that we have drifted. We catch ourselves washing the bowl while lost in thought, and for a moment, we come back. We feel the warm water on our hands. We notice the weight of the bowl, the stillness of the room. And in that small return, the glass dissolves. We are no longer watching our life through a window. We are simply living it, here, where it has been waiting for us all along. Let us be still together for a moment. Notice the sounds around you, the feeling of your own breath, the simple fact of being here. We will go on whenever you feel ready. We have been speaking of the glass that separates us from our own lives, the habit of standing one step back, watching rather than living. The natural question then is how we step through. How do we close that distance and meet life directly? The Buddhist answer is gentle, and it has a name. It is intimacy. In the Zen tradition, awakening itself is sometimes described as intimacy with all things. Not knowledge about life, not ideas concerning it, but a close, direct, tender meeting with whatever is in front of us. There is a famous saying in Zen that to study the self is to forget the self, and to forget the self is to become intimate with all things, to be met and warmed by the whole of life. This intimacy is the doorway through which joy enters, and it is far simpler and far more available than we usually imagine. What does intimacy really mean? We tend to think of it as something that happens only between people who are very close. But at its root, intimacy is something quieter and broader. It is a quality of presence, a willingness to be fully here with something, to meet it closely, to let it be exactly as it is, without rushing to change it, or explain it, or move on to the next thing. Intimacy, in this sense, rests on a deep respect for what is. When we are truly intimate with a moment, we are not standing over it, judging it, deciding whether it measures up. We are simply with it, attentive and open, allowing it to reveal itself. We can be intimate in this way, with a person, yes, but also with the sound of rain on a roof, with the steam rising from a bowl, with the bare branches of a tree against the evening sky. Anything we meet with this kind of close, respectful attention becomes a doorway into the present and into the fullness that lives there. The opposite of this is the life lived at a distance, the life we have been describing, where we hold everything at arm's length, filtering it through thought, never quite touching it. Intimacy is the healing of that distance. It is the moment the glass dissolves and we find ourselves, at last, in direct contact with our own life. There is a story from a faraway land that shows what it means to be truly known, to be met with this kind of deep and tender attention from the very beginning of life. Let us explore the practice of a people who lived long ago in a remote and beautiful country, and who held a belief about each new life unlike any other. Among these people, the true birth of a child was not counted from the day it was born, nor even from the day it was conceived. It was counted from the day the child was first a thought in its mother's heart. For when a woman of this people decided she was ready to bring a child into the world, she would go away by herself to a quiet place, often beneath a certain wide and ancient tree, and she would sit there, alone, and she would listen. She would sit in stillness until she could hear the song of the child who wished to be born. Every child, these people believed, came into the world with its own song, a melody that belonged to that soul and to no other, an expression of who that child truly was. And the mother's task, before anything else, was to listen until she had heard it. When at last she had learned the song, she would return to her village, and she would teach it to the child's father, so that the two of them could sing it together. And through the months that followed, as the child grew, they would sing the song often, calling the little one gently toward the world. When the time came for the birth, the women who gathered to help would sing the child's song as it entered the world, so that the very first sound it heard was its own melody, welcoming it, telling it, "We know you. We have been waiting for you. You belong here." And the song did not end there. It became the thread that ran through the whole of that person's life. When the child took its first stumbling steps and fell, those nearby would sing the song softly, reminding the little one of who it was. When the child grew and was hurt, or frightened, or did something it was ashamed of, the family would gather and sing the song, not as a scolding, but as a remembering. For these people believed that when a person acts unkindly or loses their way, it is because they have forgotten who they truly are. And so, rather than punishment, they offered the song, calling the person back to their own deepest self. The song was sung at the great passages of life. It was sung at the coming of age, when the child became an adult. It was sung at marriage, when two songs were joined together. And it was sung, finally and tenderly, at the very end of a long life, when the elders of the village would gather around the one who was leaving and sing the song one last time to accompany that soul gently on its way, as it had been accompanied at the very beginning. From the first thought of life to the final farewell, that person was held inside their own song, known and met and accompanied at every step. They never had to wonder whether they belonged. They had been sung into the world, and they would be sung out of it, and all along the way, whenever they faltered or forgot, there was a melody to remind them, "You are known, you are loved, you belong here." There is something in this story that touches a deep ache in many of us. For so many people carry, quietly, a feeling of not quite belonging, a sense of being unseen, unmet, a stranger, even in their own life. We move through the world half hidden, rarely feeling that anyone has truly heard our song. But the deeper teaching here is not only about being known by others. It is about a kind of intimacy we can offer to life itself, and that life, in a sense, is always offering to us. For the same close, tender, respectful attention that the mother gave as she listened for the song, we can bring to each moment of our own experience. We can learn to listen to our life as she listened beneath that tree, with patience, with reverence, with a willingness to truly hear what is there. When we meet a moment that way, fully present, deeply attentive, holding it with care rather than holding it at a distance, something remarkable happens. The separation dissolves. We are no longer a stranger watching life through glass. We are intimate with it, woven into it, met by it. And in that meeting, we begin to feel what the child in the story felt from its very first breath, that we are not alone here, that we are not separate from the great unfolding of life, that we belong. This kind of intimacy does not require anything grand or unusual. It can arise in the most ordinary moment, whenever we are willing to be fully present. There is a small story that shows this. Let us explore the tale of a restless young monk who could not understand why his years of effort had brought him so little peace. He went to the abbot of his monastery, an old woman known throughout the region for her serenity, and he asked her, almost in despair, "I have meditated for years. I have studied the teachings, kept the precepts, done everything asked of me. Why have I not found the peace you seem to carry so easily? What am I missing?" The abbot considered him for a moment. Then she asked, "When you walked to my room this morning, did you notice the garden you passed through?" The young monk hesitated. "I was thinking about the question I wished to ask you," he admitted. "And the bell that rang at dawn," she said. "Did you hear it ring, or did you only register that it was time to rise?" He lowered his eyes. "I suppose I only knew it was time." The abbot smiled not unkindly. You have spent years trying to grasp peace as though it were a distant summit to be reached through great striving, she said. But peace is not far away. It is in the garden you walked through without seeing. It is in the bell you heard without listening. It is in this cup of water on the table between us, if only you would meet it fully. You keep looking past the present moment, searching for something more, and so you miss the very thing you are searching for, which has been here, beside you, all along. She lifted a single fallen leaf from the floor and held it out to him. Here, she said, do not think about this leaf. Do not name it, or judge it, or wonder what lesson it holds. Simply be with it. Truly meet it as though you had never seen such a thing before. The young monk took the leaf and looked at it, really looked, perhaps for the first time in his life. He saw the fine network of its veins, the soft gradations of color, the gentle curl of its dried edges. And as he gave himself fully to that small, ordinary thing, his restless striving fell away, and a deep stillness opened in him. There was nothing to reach for. There was only this leaf, this breath, this moment, complete in itself. In that simple act of intimate attention, he tasted, at last, the peace he had chased for so many years. And without his noticing, the faintest smile came to rest on his face, the soft half smile of someone who has finally arrived where he always was. The Buddha taught that everything in existence is deeply connected, that nothing stands alone, that each thing arises in relationship with everything else. We are not separate fragments adrift in an indifferent world. We are part of the whole, as much as the rivers and the trees and the wide evening sky. To live with intimacy is simply to feel this truth directly, to come home to a belonging that was never actually in question, only forgotten. Let us pause now and listen, just for a moment, to whatever is here. Let yourself be present with it, gently and without hurry. When you are ready, we will continue on together. There is a quality that begins to grow in us, almost without our noticing, once we start meeting life with the close and tender attention we have been describing. It does not arrive all at once. It gathers slowly, moment by moment, as we pay attention, as we let ourselves be present with what is actually here. And it is one of the sweetest things a human heart can come to know. It is the felt sense of belonging. The Buddhist tradition speaks of a great truth that lies at the heart of things, the truth that nothing exists alone. The old teachers described existence as a vast and shimmering web, in which every single thing is connected to every other, each one reflecting and depending upon all the rest. There is an image from the Buddhist teachings of a net that stretches infinitely in all directions, and at every crossing point in the net there hangs a single clear jewel. And because each jewel is perfectly clear, it reflects every other jewel in the entire net, so that in any one of them you can see all the others. Nothing is separate. Each thing holds the whole, and the whole lives in each thing. This is not merely a lovely idea. It is a description of how things actually are. And when we begin to feel it directly, rather than simply think about it, something in us that has long felt alone begins, at last, to relax. Most of us carry, somewhere deep inside, a quiet sense of being separate. We feel ourselves to be a small, solitary self, sealed inside our own skin, looking out at a world that is other than us, apart from us, sometimes even against us. This feeling of separation is so constant that we take it for simple reality. We do not question it. We assume that this is just what it means to be a person, to be alone inside oneself, peering out. But the Buddha taught that this sense of a separate, isolated self is not the whole truth. It is more like a misunderstanding, a kind of optical trick of the mind. In reality, we are not sealed off from the world at all. We are utterly woven into it. The air moves in and out of us with every breath, air that has passed through countless other lives, through forests and oceans and the bodies of every creature that has ever breathed. The water that makes up most of our bodies has fallen as rain, flowed in rivers, risen into clouds, and will do so again. The food that becomes our very flesh grew in the earth and the sunlight. We are not visitors to this world, set down in it from somewhere else. We are made of it, through and through. We grew out of it as naturally as a wave rises from the sea. And so the sense of being a stranger here, of not quite belonging, is a kind of forgetting. We have forgotten that we are part of the whole. We belong here as fully and as naturally as the trees belong, as the rivers belong, as the mountains and the stars, and every living creature belongs. No one had to earn their place among these. They simply are, woven into the fabric of things. And so are we. There is a teaching attributed to the Buddha that captures this with great simplicity. He spoke of how this exists because that exists, how this arises because that arises. Nothing comes into being on its own, by itself, out of nothing. Each thing depends on countless other things in order to be what it is. The flower depends on the rain, the soil, the sun, the seed, the long ages of the earth that made the ground it grows in. Remove any one of these, and the flower cannot be. And the same is true of us. We are held in being by an endless web of support, most of which we never see and rarely thank. The farmers who grew our food. The countless lives across uncounted years that shaped the world we were born into. The sun that has burned steadily for billions of years so that there might be warmth and light for living things. We did not make ourselves, and we do not sustain ourselves alone. We are carried, every moment, by the whole of existence, held up by more than we could ever name. There is a story that points to this, and it concerns a woman who spent half her life chasing the very feeling of belonging she could not seem to find. Let us explore the tale of a determined seeker who left her village as a young woman, convinced that somewhere in the world there was a place or a teaching or an experience that would finally make her feel at home in her own life. She studied with one teacher after another. She learned to still her mind, to sit for long hours, to recite the old texts from memory. She grew skilled and disciplined, and yet the deep sense of connection she longed for stayed just out of reach. Always she felt herself to be a watcher at the edge of things, striving toward a kind of oneness she could describe in words but had never once tasted. The harder she reached for it, the further away it seemed to drift. After many years, weary and discouraged, she came to a small mountain hermitage and asked to stay. The elder who lived there gave her no grand teaching. She simply put the seeker to work, sweeping the courtyard, hauling water, tending the vegetable patch behind the huts. Day after day, the same humble chores. The seeker grew frustrated. She had come for wisdom, for some final key, and instead, she was sweeping leaves. One morning, she was sweeping the stone path as she had done 100 times before, her mind still busy with its old longing, still reaching for the breakthrough that never came. A small stone, caught by her broom, skipped across the path and struck a length of hollow bamboo lying against the wall. It made a single, clear, ringing sound in the cool morning air. And at that sound, with no warning at all, something in the seeker fell completely open. In an instant, the lifelong sense of being separate, the watcher standing apart from the world, simply was not there anymore. There was no longer a her on one side and a world on the other. There was only the morning, whole and seamless, and she was not looking at it. She was part of it. The sound of the stone, the cool air, the broom in her hands, the birds in the pines, the sun warming the stones, her own breath rising and falling, all of it was a single living wholeness, and she belonged to it utterly. She had not added anything or reached anything. The separation she had struggled against for so many years had never been real. It had been only a thought, a habit of seeing, and now, for a moment, that thought had fallen silent, and what remained was the plain truth she had been chasing all along. Tears came to her eyes, though she was not sad in the least. She saw, with a clarity that went all the way through her, that she had been like someone searching everywhere for a home she already lived in. The belonging she had crossed the world to find had been the ground beneath her feet the whole time. There was nowhere she needed to get to. There never had been. She was, and had always been, entirely at home. The elder, passing by with a bundle of firewood, saw the look on her face and simply nodded, as though nothing remarkable had happened at all. For of course, nothing had. The seeker had merely woken up to what was already true. The Buddhist teachers often reached for the image of the ocean to point at this very truth. Consider a single wave rising up on the wide surface of the sea. For a moment, the wave has a shape all its own. It lifts, it curls, it catches the light, distinct from every other wave around it. And we might imagine, if a wave could think, that it would feel itself to be a separate thing, born alone, traveling alone, and soon to vanish alone when it reaches the shore. But the wave was never separate from the ocean. It rose out of the ocean. It is made of nothing but ocean. Its rising and its falling are simply the ocean moving, expressing itself in one particular form for one particular moment. When the wave settles back down, nothing is truly lost. The water that was the wave is still here, still ocean, exactly as it always was. The wave was never a thing apart that needed to fear its own ending. It was always just the sea, being a wave for a while. We are very much like that wave. We rise up out of the great ocean of life, take a particular form for a time, and imagine ourselves separate, alone, small. We forget that we are made entirely of what surrounds us, that our brief individual shape is simply life expressing itself through us for a season. There is a teaching in the Zen tradition that, to know this, to truly feel that the wave and the ocean are not two, is to be set free from a great and needless fear. For when we understand that we have never been separate from the whole, the loneliness at the root of so much of our suffering loses its grip. We are not a small thing adrift in a vast and foreign sea. We are the sea itself, alive and aware, taking the shape of a person for a little while. When this kind of belonging begins to settle into us, it brings with it a particular quality, and that quality is ease. Ease is the very texture of a healing heart. It is not the same as numbness, where we have shut down and stopped feeling. Nor is it escape, a turning away from the difficulties of life. The ease that comes with belonging is something far richer. It is the deep relaxation of a heart that no longer feels it must defend itself against life. It is what arises when we stop bracing, stop guarding, stop holding the world at a distance, and finally allow ourselves to rest in the simple truth that we are part of all this, held by it, at home in it. So much of our tension, our anxiety, our weariness comes from the constant low effort of defending a separate self. We are forever protecting our boundaries, managing how we appear, guarding against threats real and imagined, holding ourselves slightly apart from everything so that we will not be hurt. It is exhausting, this endless vigilance, though we are so used to it that we hardly feel its weight until it lifts. And when it does lift, when we remember that we belong, the relief is profound. The shoulders come down, the breath deepens, the heart, which has been clenched for so long, begins to open. This is the ease the Buddhist path points toward. It is not a numbing or a checking out. It is a coming home, a settling into our true place in the web of things, where there is nothing left to defend because there was never any real separation to begin with. The journey we have been on together has a shape to it, and it is worth seeing that shape whole. We close ourselves off through grasping, through envy, through the refusal of joy, through old grievances, through the simple habit of living one step removed from our lives. And we open ourselves again through presence, through intimacy, through the close and tender attention that dissolves the glass between us and the world. As we open, belonging grows. And from belonging comes ease, the deep rest of a heart that knows, at last, that it is home. Let us settle here together for a few breaths. Feel the ground that holds you, the air that moves through you, your quiet place in the whole of things. We will go on shortly. We come now to something that lies near the very center of all these teachings, a realization that can gently change how a person meets their entire life. It runs against much of what we have been taught to believe about happiness, and yet, once we truly see it, it has the ring of something we have always somehow known. We tend to assume that joy depends on things going well. That happiness is what we feel when life is pleasant, when we get what we want, when circumstances arrange themselves in our favor. And so we spend enormous effort trying to make life pleasant, trying to arrange the conditions just so, believing that joy waits on the other side of getting everything right. But the Buddhist understanding points somewhere else entirely. It suggests that joy does not actually come from things being pleasant. Joy comes from being real. What does it mean to be real? It means to be in honest, direct contact with our actual experience, whatever that experience happens to be. Not the experience we wish we were having. Not the experience we think we should be having. The one that is genuinely here, right now, in this moment, met without pretense, and without the endless effort to push it away or dress it up as something else. This is a subtle thing. Much of our suffering does not come from our experience itself. It comes from our resistance to our experience, from the gap between what is actually happening and what we insist should be happening instead. We feel a difficult emotion, and rather than simply feeling it, we fight it, judge it, try to escape it, pile worry on top of it. We meet life with a constant low-grade argument, forever wishing this moment were other than it is. And it is in that argument, that resistance, that so much of our unhappiness lies. To get real is to lay down the argument, It is to turn toward our actual experience and meet it honestly, with openness, even with a kind of tenderness. And the remarkable thing, the thing that surprises nearly everyone who discovers it, is that this turning toward, this honest meeting, brings with it an aliveness, a fullness, a quiet joy that has nothing to do with whether the experience is pleasant or unpleasant. The joy is in the realness itself. It is in the simple, vivid fact of being fully present and honest with our own life, no longer hiding from it, no longer holding it at arm's length. There was once a woman who went on a long retreat into the mountains, seeking peace. She had imagined, when she set out, that the days would be serene. She pictured herself sitting in quiet contentment, her mind growing calm and clear, joy arising naturally in the stillness. But that is not what happened. From the very first day, she found herself battered by what we might call difficult inner weather. Restlessness rose up in her, and boredom, and annoying impatience. Old sorrows she thought she had left behind came flooding back. Doubts assailed her. Some days she felt nothing but a dull, grey heaviness. Other days she was so agitated she could hardly sit still. She struggled against all of it. She tried to force her mind to be calm. She judged herself harshly for failing to find the peace she had come for. She fought her restlessness, resisted her sadness, pushed against the boredom, and grew only more miserable for the effort. The harder she tried to make her experience pleasant, the worse she felt. Then, one morning, something shifted. She was so exhausted from the struggle that she simply gave up fighting. She stopped trying to make herself feel something other than what she felt. She let the restlessness be restlessness. She let the sadness be sadness. She stopped arguing with her own experience and simply allowed it to be there, meeting it honestly, without resistance, for the first time since she had arrived. And in that moment of surrender, something opened. The heaviness was still there, but she was no longer fighting it, and so it no longer crushed her. The sadness was still present, but met with openness rather than resistance. It began to soften and move, like ice slowly thawing. And underneath it all, beneath the difficult weather she had stopped struggling against, she discovered something she had not expected at all, a deep and quiet joy. Not the joy of pleasant feelings, for her feelings were not particularly pleasant. It was the joy of being fully, honestly alive. The joy of finally being real with her own experience. The joy of coming home to herself, exactly as she was. Her face, which had been tight with effort for so many days, softened into the smallest smile, the gentle half-smile of one who has stopped fighting and simply let life be what it is. She understood then what she had gotten wrong. She had come to the mountains believing that joy would arrive when her inner weather turned fair. But joy had nothing to do with the weather. Joy came the moment she stopped fighting the weather and simply met it, whatever it was. Joy came from getting real. This same truth shows itself not only on still mountaintops, but in the ordinary middle of a busy life. Let us explore the tale of a craftsman in an old city who had built his days around the avoidance of anything unpleasant. He was a careful man, and he had arranged his life to be as smooth and comfortable as possible. He avoided difficult conversations. He turned away from his own sorrows, keeping himself busy so he would not have to feel them. He shied from anything that might unsettle his hard-won calm. And on the surface, his life looked peaceful. Yet underneath, he felt strangely flat, hollow, as though he were watching his life from a great distance, never quite touching it. For all his comfort, he was not happy, and he did not understand why. One season, a sorrow came that he could not avoid. Someone he had loved for many years moved far away, and the parting struck him deeply. At first he did what he had always done. He tried to stay busy. He tried to push the sadness down, to keep it at a distance, to carry on as though nothing had changed. But the grief was too large to outrun, and one evening, alone, it finally caught up with him, and he let himself feel it fully for the first time. He expected the sadness to overwhelm him. Instead, something unexpected happened. As he let the grief move through him, honestly and without resistance, he felt, mixed in with the pain, a strange and unfamiliar aliveness. His heart, which had been closed and guarded for so long, was open at last, and even though what flowed through it was sorrow, the simple fact of feeling something fully, of being truly present with his own heart, brought a depth and a richness he had not known in years. He wept, and in the weeping there was grief, but there was also, astonishingly, a kind of joy. The joy of being real. The joy of no longer hiding from his own life. In the weeks that followed, he found that something in him had changed. Having allowed himself to feel one difficult thing fully, he began to let himself feel everything more fully, the painful and the sweet alike. His life, which had felt flat and distant, grew vivid and close. He had spent years protecting himself from feeling, and in doing so had shut himself out of his own aliveness. The moment he stopped and let himself simply be real, the fullness he had been missing came flooding back. This realization carries a kind of hidden power, because it means that joy is never actually out of reach. If our happiness depended on pleasant circumstances, then it would always be fragile, always at the mercy of conditions we cannot control. But if joy comes from realness, from honest presence with whatever is here, then it is available in any moment, even the hard ones. Even in sorrow, met honestly, there is a strange aliveness. Even in difficulty, fully faced, there is a fullness that resistance had been hiding from us. The Buddha taught his students to turn towards suffering rather than away from it, to understand it deeply rather than flee from it. This was not because he wished anyone to suffer. It was because he saw that our flight from difficulty is itself a great source of our pain, and that meeting our experience directly, with clear and steady awareness, is the doorway to a freedom that nothing can take away. Consider how much of our energy goes into the avoiding. We spend a great deal of our lives building small defenses against discomfort, distracting ourselves, numbing ourselves, turning away the moment anything difficult appears. And there is a hidden cost to all this turning away. For the heart cannot close itself selectively. When we shut the door against sorrow, that same door also closes against joy. When we numb ourselves to pain, we numb ourselves to delight in the very same motion. The walls we build to keep out what we fear also keep out what we long for. This is why a life arranged entirely around comfort so often feels strangely empty. In protecting ourselves from feeling the hard things, we have stopped truly feeling anything at all. The only way back to a vivid, joyful life is to open the door again and to let it stay open, trusting that a heart willing to feel sorrow is also a heart finally able to feel joy. There is an expression in the Buddhist tradition for the quality of heart that can do this. It is sometimes called the lion's roar. It speaks of a courageous heart, a heart so open and so unafraid that it can meet anything that arises, pleasant or painful, without flinching, without fleeing, without needing to defend itself. This is not the false courage of one who has hardened against life. It is the deep, soft strength of one who has stopped fighting it. A heart like this has room for everything. It can hold joy and sorrow, ease and difficulty, all of it, with a vast and steady tenderness. And from that spacious, fearless openness, an unshakable joy arises, a joy that does not depend on getting what we want, but flows simply from being fully and honestly alive. So, when difficult weather moves through you, as it moves through everyone, you might experiment, very gently, with no longer fighting it. Not forcing yourself to feel better, not pretending, not pushing it away, but simply turning toward what is actually here and letting it be what it is. You may find, as so many have found before you, that on the far side of resistance there is not the misery you feared, but a deep and surprising aliveness, the simple joy of being real with your own life, exactly as it is in this moment. Let us be still for a few breaths now. Whatever is here, let it be here, met gently, without struggle. In a little while, we will go on. There is one more subtle way that we hold ourselves apart from the fullness of life, and it is so deeply ingrained that we rarely recognize it as a problem at all. In fact, we usually think of it as a strength. It is the mind's endless habit of explaining, of naming everything, sorting everything, having an answer ready for everything, so that nothing ever has the chance to surprise us. From the time we are small, we are taught to know, to label, to categorize, to file each new thing away under a heading we already understand. And this is useful, of course. It helps us function in the world. But somewhere along the way, the knowing mind grows so busy and so confident that it begins to cover over the living world with a thin layer of concepts until we are no longer meeting life at all. We are only meeting our ideas about life. We glance at a tree and think, tree, and move on, having never really seen it. We meet a person and decide we already know who they are. We look at the sky we have seen 10,000 times and do not bother to look at all. There is a phrase in the Zen tradition that points toward the cure for this. It is called beginner's mind, or sometimes don't know mind. One of the most respected Zen teachers of the modern age put it simply, in the mind of the beginner, there are many possibilities, but in the mind of the expert, there are few. The beginner, who does not yet know, sees everything freshly, with open eyes and open wonder. The expert, certain they already understand, has closed the door. They look at the world through a screen of what they already think, and so the world can no longer reach them. Don't know mind is not ignorance. It is something far wiser. It is the willingness to meet each moment without the heavy baggage of all our conclusions, to let things be mysterious again, to look at even the most familiar thing as though seeing it for the very first time. It is the mind of a child before the world was divided up and labeled and made ordinary. The great teachers of Zen prized this quality above almost any other because they understood that awakening is not about accumulating more and more knowledge. It is, in a sense, about setting knowledge down, about emptying out our certainties so that we can meet reality directly, fresh and unmediated, rather than through the dusty filter of our concepts. There is an old instruction in the tradition to leave everything you know behind, to approach the moment empty-handed, with nothing held in front of you, so that life can touch you as it actually is. Consider how this works with wonder. The whole world is filled, every moment, with things that are genuinely astonishing. The fact that anything exists at all. The light of the sun crossing an unimaginable distance to warm your face. A seed, dry and small, holding within it an entire tree. The countless small miracles of an ordinary day. And yet most of us walk through all of it half asleep, unmoved, because we believe we already understand it, and so we no longer trouble to look. There is a saying that captures this perfectly. The world will never run short of wonders. It will only run short of wonder. The marvels are always there, endless and free, surrounding us at every turn. What runs short is our capacity to be amazed by them. We grow jaded, certain, dull to the miraculous, not because the world has become less astonishing, but because we have stopped letting it astonish us. There is a kind of seeing that small children have before they have learned what everything is supposed to be. A child does not know that the sky is just the sky. To a child, a puddle is a wonder, a beetle is a marvel, a smooth stone is a treasure worth carrying in a pocket all day long. A child will gaze at colors in a sunset that an adult has decided are not worth pausing for, will laugh with delight at a thing the grown-up has long since filed away as nothing special. This is not because children know more than we do. It is because they know less, and so they are still able to see. The world has not yet been flattened by their certainty about it. There is a story that shows what it means to recover this fresh seeing. Let us explore the tale of an old scholar who had spent his entire life mastering knowledge. He had read every important text. He could recite the teachings of the great sages, debate the finest points of doctrine, and answer nearly any question put to him. He was respected everywhere as a man of immense learning, and yet, in the quiet of his own heart, he felt strangely dead inside. For all his knowing, he took no joy in anything. The world held no surprises for him. He had a name and a category for everything, and so nothing could move him anymore. One day, troubled by this emptiness, he traveled to visit a Zen master who lived simply in the hills, hoping to add this master's wisdom to his vast collection of understanding. When he arrived, the master welcomed him warmly and offered to share some tea. As they sat together, the scholar began, as was his habit, to speak. He spoke of all he had studied, all he had mastered, all the teachings he had already understood. He wished the master to know that he was no ordinary student, but a man of great learning who had come to discuss the subtleties of the path as an equal. The master listened with the soft half-smile of the old Buddha statues, the look of one who carries a deep and settled ease, and said nothing. After a while, he rose and fetched a small, smooth river stone from outside the door and placed it on the table between them. "Tell me," the master said, "what is this?" The scholar glanced at it. "It is a stone," he said. "A common river stone, smoothed by water over many years. Granite, most likely. There is nothing remarkable about it." The master nodded slowly. "You have told me what it is called," he said. "You have told me what it is made of and how it came to be smooth. But you have not seen it at all. You looked at it for less than a moment, gave it a name, and decided you already knew it. This is how you have looked at your entire life. You have named everything, and so you have truly seen nothing. You wonder why your heart feels dead. It is because you killed the world with your knowing. He picked up the stone and held it out in his open palm. Now look again, he said gently. Forget that it is a stone. Forget granite. Forget rivers. Forget everything you know. Just look, as though you had never seen such a thing in all your life, as though you had just arrived in this world a moment ago, and this were the very first object your eyes had ever fallen upon. The scholar, a little embarrassed, took the stone and looked. And this time, because the master was watching, he made himself truly look. He saw the fine flecks of color scattered across its surface, silver and gray and palest pink. He saw how the morning light caught its curves and pooled in its small hollows. He felt its cool weight resting in his hand, its impossible smoothness, the quiet solidity of a thing that had been shaped patiently over more years than he could imagine. And for just a moment, the old labels fell away, and he was simply there, holding a small and astonishing piece of the world, seeing it as if for the first time. To his great surprise, his eyes filled with tears. He had held 10,000 certainties in his mind, and not one of them had ever made him feel what he felt now, gazing in simple wonder at an ordinary stone. He understood, at last, that all his knowledge had been a kind of sleep, and that this fresh and open seeing was what it meant to be truly awake. Sometimes it is the very young who remind the old of this, for they have not yet forgotten how to see. There was once a grandfather, a serious and busy man, who was walking home through his village at dusk with his small granddaughter. He was tired, his mind full of the day's troubles, his eyes fixed on the road ahead and the tasks still waiting for him. Suddenly, the little girl stopped and gasped, pointing up at the sky. "Look," she whispered, as though she had discovered something no one had ever seen before. The grandfather looked up, half expecting something to be wrong. But there was only the evening sky, deepening from gold to rose, with the first faint star just beginning to show. He had seen 1,000 such skies. "Yes, yes," he said, and began to walk on. "It is only the sunset. Come along, it is getting late." But the child would not move. She stood rooted to the spot, her face turned up in pure astonishment, drinking in the colors as though the heavens had opened just for her. "But look," she said again, softly. "Look how it is everywhere." Something in her voice stopped him. He turned back, and this time, instead of glancing, he let himself truly look as his granddaughter was looking. And slowly, as he stood beside her in the cooling air, the sky he had dismissed a moment before began to reveal itself. He saw the impossible richness of the colors, gold bleeding into crimson, crimson into a soft and tender violet. He saw how the light gilded the edges of the clouds, how the whole vast dome of the heavens was quietly ablaze, how that single early star hung trembling in the deepening blue. It was, he realized with a start, extraordinarily beautiful. And it had been there every single evening of his long life, while he hurried beneath it with his eyes on the ground. He reached down and took his granddaughter's hand, and the two of them stood together in silence until the colors faded. He had come out to the road that evening as a tired old man with no time for the sky. He walked the rest of the way home with the calm, grateful heart of someone who has just remembered how to see. The child had taught him, without meaning to, what all his years had made him forget, that the world is endlessly astonishing for those who still know how to look. There is another story from long ago about a young painter who believed he had nothing left to learn. Let us explore his tale. He was gifted, and he knew it. By the time he was a young man, he could paint a mountain, a river, a flowering branch, with a skill that drew praise from everyone who saw his work. He had studied the great paintings of the past, learned every rule of composition, mastered every brushstroke the old masters had set down. And so when he heard of a hermit in the eastern hills who was said to be the finest painter alive, he set out to meet him, not so much to learn as to be recognized as the master's equal. He found the old painter living in a simple hut beside a stream and presented his finest work, a careful painting of a bamboo grove. "I have painted bamboo 1,000 times," the young man said proudly. "I know everything there is to know about it. The joints, the way the leaves fall, the angle of the stalks in the wind. Tell me, is my work not the equal of any in the land?" The old painter studied the painting for a long while. "It is very skilled," he said at last. "Every leaf is correct. Every line is where it should be. And yet there is no bamboo here at all." The young man was stung. "No bamboo? It is nothing but bamboo. I have painted exactly what I know." "That is the trouble," the old painter said gently. "You have painted what you know. You have not painted what is there. You learned bamboo so long ago that you no longer see it. You see only your idea of it, the same idea you have carried for years, and you set that idea down again and again. Your brush is full of memory and empty of the living plant." He rose and led the young man outside to where a stand of bamboo grew beside the stream. "Sit here," he said. "Do not paint. Do not even think of painting. Simply watch this bamboo, as though you had never in your life seen such a thing, as though you did not even have a word for it. Watch it until you have forgotten everything you know about it. Then perhaps you will begin to see it." The young man did as he was told, though at first he was restless and proud. He sat for an hour and saw only the bamboo he already knew. But as the day wore on, something began to shift. He watched the light change along a single stalk through the afternoon. He saw how one leaf trembled when its neighbor was perfectly still. He noticed a faint silver bloom on the younger stems that he had never once painted, because he had never once seen it. He watched the whole grove sway and settle and sway again, never the same from one moment to the next, alive in a way his careful paintings had never been. By dusk, he understood that he had spent years painting a word, and that the living bamboo before him was something he was only now meeting for the first time. He stayed with the old painter through many seasons, and his work, when he finally took up the brush again, was changed. It was less perfect than before, and far more alive, because now he painted not what he knew, but what he saw, freshly, each time, as though for the first time. He had set down his expertise, and in its place he had found something the rules could never give him, the living world itself, met directly, with eyes that no longer assumed they already knew. What the old painter understood is something the Zen tradition returns to again and again. Our knowledge, useful as it is, can quietly become a wall between us and the very thing we wish to know. We learn the name of a thing, and the name takes the place of the thing. We learn what a person is like, and our idea of them takes the place of the living person, who is changing and growing in ways our fixed picture never allows for. We learn what our own life is, and that tired conclusion takes the place of the fresh, surprising reality unfolding in front of us each day. This is why the old masters spoke of approaching each moment with empty hands. not because knowledge is worthless, but because a mind already full has no room to receive what is actually here. The cup that is full can hold nothing more. Only the empty cup, the mind willing to not know, can be filled by the living moment. And there is a deep gladness in this emptiness, a lightness that comes from no longer having to be the one who knows. The expert carries the weight of all his certainties. The beginner walks free, open, delighted, ready to be surprised by a world that is always, in truth, brand new. There is a freedom in admitting, simply, that we do not know. When we stop pretending to have life figured out, when we let the familiar become mysterious again, a great pressure lifts from us. We no longer have to defend our conclusions or maintain our expertise. We can meet our own days with the curiosity of a traveler in a new land, where every ordinary thing, a cup, a face, the light through a window, holds the quiet possibility of wonder. This is not a loss of wisdom. It is the beginning of it. Consider how this changes the way we meet the people closest to us. We tend to believe we know them completely. We have a fixed picture of a husband, a friend, a child, built up over years, and we relate to that picture rather than to the living person in front of us. We assume we already know what they will say, how they will react, who they are. And in doing so, we quietly stop seeing them at all. They become a familiar outline, taken for granted, no longer capable of surprising us. Yet the truth is that every person is changing, always, growing and shifting in ways our fixed picture never accounts for. The husband we think we know completely had a private thought this morning we have never imagined. The old friend has been quietly changed by a sorrow we know nothing about. When we meet them with don't know mind, willing to be surprised, willing to discover them again, something tender becomes possible. We begin to see the actual person, fresh and alive, rather than the worn image we have carried for years. Many a closeness grows stale not because the love has gone, but because we have stopped truly looking, certain we already know everything there is to know. The same is true of the place we live, the work we do, the path beneath our feet each morning. A road walked 1,000 times becomes invisible. We stop noticing the houses, the trees, the changing light, because we have decided there is nothing new to see. And yet that road has never once been exactly the same. The light is different today than it was yesterday. A tree has put out a new leaf. A flower has opened in a garden we pass without a glance. The Buddhist teaching of impermanence points exactly here. Nothing is ever truly the same. From one moment to the next, nothing simply repeats, and so every moment is genuinely new and will never come again. The mind that thinks it has seen it all before is simply mistaken. It has not seen this morning before, for this morning has never existed until now. To walk through the world with don't know mind is to walk through a place that is endlessly new, because in truth, it is. There is a gentle invitation hidden in all of this. We need not work to become wiser by gathering ever more knowledge. We can become wiser and far happier by holding what we know a little more lightly, by leaving space around our certainties, by letting ourselves be beginners again in the one life we are living. A beginner is never bored, because for a beginner, everything is fresh. And a heart that meets the world freshly is a heart that has found its way back to wonder, and through wonder, back to joy. This is what waits for us when we are willing to loosen our grip on knowing. The world becomes new again. The ordinary turns luminous. A meal, a face, a patch of sky, All of it can shine with the same wonder it held when we were children, if only we will set down our certainty long enough to actually look. We do not need to travel anywhere or acquire anything. We need only meet what is already here, with fresh and open eyes, not knowing, willing to be amazed. Let us pause now and rest in not knowing, just for a moment. Let whatever is here be new and unexplained. When you are ready, we will continue on together. When we speak of joy, we often imagine something bright and rising, a lifting of the spirits, a happiness that swells and fills us. But there is a deeper joy that does not rise and fall at all. It is steady. It rests beneath the changing weather of our days, like the calm at the bottom of the sea, untouched by the storms that ruffle the surface. The Buddhist tradition has a name for this quality of steady, unshakable peace. It is called equanimity, and it may be the truest foundation of joy there is, because it is the one that nothing can take away. We have spoken of meeting our experience honestly, of opening to whatever arises. Equanimity is the fruit of that openness ripened to its fullest. It is the balanced heart, the heart that can meet the 10,000 joys and sorrows of a life without being knocked off its center, without clutching at the pleasant or recoiling from the difficult. It is not coldness. It is not indifference. It is a vast and tender steadiness, a peace deep enough to hold everything that comes. Think of how most of us live, tossed about by the changing conditions of our lives. When things go well, we are lifted up, elated, certain that happiness has finally arrived. When things go badly, we are cast down, anxious, sure that something has gone terribly wrong. We rise and fall with every turn of fortune, every bit of praise or blame, every gain and every loss, like a small boat at the mercy of the waves. It is exhausting, this endless rising and falling, and it leaves our peace forever fragile, always dependent on getting what we want and avoiding what we do not. The Buddha spoke often of what he called the 8 worldly winds. These are the 4 pairs of conditions that blow through every human life: gain and loss, pleasure and pain, praise and blame, fame and disrepute. He taught that these winds will always blow. No one escapes them. The wise and the foolish alike will meet both fortune and misfortune, both kind words and cruel ones. What separates a heart at peace from a heart in turmoil is not whether the winds blow, but whether they can knock us over. The awakened heart, the Buddha said, stands firm amid the 8 worldly winds, like a great mountain that is not moved by the storms passing across its face. There is an image from the tradition that holds this beautifully. Picture a pool of clear water. When the wind blows across it, the surface ripples and churns, and the reflection it holds is broken into 1,000 shards, scattered and unclear. But when the wind dies down and the water grows still, the pool becomes a perfect mirror, reflecting the moon and the sky with flawless clarity. Our minds are like that pool. The winds of craving and aversion, of grasping and fear, keep the surface forever agitated, and so we cannot see clearly, cannot rest. But as those winds settle, the mind grows still, and in that stillness there is a peace and a clear seeing that the churning surface never knew. There is a story that shows what this steadiness looks like in a human life. let us explore the tale of a farmer who lived long ago in a remote valley, a man known throughout the region for his unshakable calm. One year, his only horse, a fine and valuable animal, broke through its fence and ran off into the hills. When his neighbors heard of it, they came to console him. "What terrible luck," they said. "Your horse is gone. How will you manage now?" The farmer only shrugged and said, "Perhaps. We shall see." A few days later, the horse returned, and not alone. It came down from the hills leading a whole herd of wild horses behind it, and now the farmer's modest stable was full of fine animals. The neighbors came again, this time to celebrate. "What wonderful fortune," they cried. "You are a rich man now." And again the farmer only smiled gently and said, "Perhaps. We shall see." Some time after, the farmer's son was working with one of the wild horses, trying to tame it, when he was thrown and broke his leg badly. Once more the neighbors gathered, full of sympathy. "What misfortune?" they said. "Your only son, injured and unable to help you with the work. How will you bear it?" The farmer tended his son with care, and to the neighbors he said only, "Perhaps. We shall see." Not long afterward, soldiers came through the valley, conscripting every able-bodied young man to march away to a distant and dangerous campaign. They came to the farmer's house, but finding his son with a broken leg, unable to walk, they passed him by and left him at home. The neighbors, whose own sons had been taken, came to the farmer yet again, marveling at how things had turned out. Through all of it, the gain and the loss, the good fortune and the bad, the farmer had remained the same. He had not been swept up into giddy celebration when things went well, nor cast down into despair when they went badly. He had met each turn of events with the same gentle, steady calm, the same unhurried, "We shall see." For he had learned, over a long life, what the Buddha taught, that we can rarely know whether any single event is truly fortune or misfortune, that the winds will blow as they will, and that the only real peace lies not in controlling them, but in becoming the kind of person they cannot knock over. His calm did not come from things going his way. It came from a steadiness deep within him that no passing wind could reach. Now, you might wonder whether such a peaceful, even heart would be a cold one, a heart that has stopped feeling, that no longer delights in anything. But it is exactly the opposite. And this brings us to the gentle image that has been with us from the very beginning. The half smile of the Buddha. You have surely seen it in the old statues and paintings. The face of the Buddha at peace. The eyes are soft, half closed, turned gently inward. The whole expression is relaxed, untroubled, at ease. And on the lips there rests the faintest trace of a smile. Not a wide grin of excitement. Not a forced or performed cheerfulness. Just a small, quiet upturning, the natural expression of a heart that is deeply at peace and simply glad to be alive. That half smile is the very face of equanimity. It shows us that the steady heart is not a grim or joyless one. It is a heart so settled, so free of struggle, that gladness simply rests upon it of its own accord, like sunlight on still water. The Buddha is not smiling because something good has just happened to him. He is smiling because he has stopped fighting with life, because he wants for nothing, because he is at home in this moment, exactly as it is. His joy does not depend on the winds blowing his way. It rises from a peace far deeper than any passing condition could touch. There is something remarkable about that gentle smile, which is that it can be a doorway as well as a sign. We tend to think the smile must wait until the joy arrives. But the old wisdom understood that it can also work the other way. When we soften our own face, when we let the tension drain from the jaw and the brow, when we allow the faintest, gentlest smile to rest on our lips for no reason at all, something in the heart begins, slowly, to soften in answer. The body and the heart are not two separate things. A face that is clenched and braced holds a heart that is clenched and braced. And a face that softens into a gentle half smile invites the heart to soften along with it. This is not about pretending or pasting on a false cheerfulness over real pain. It is something more honest and more tender than that. It is simply allowing the body to take the shape of peace and letting that shape gently remind the heart of its own deeper nature, the nature that lies beneath all the agitation, calm and clear, like the still pool when the wind has finally died away. There is a kind of half smile that the Buddhist teachers speak of as carrying compassion and ease at once. It softens how we meet ourselves. It softens how we meet our own difficult moments. Worn gently, without force, it becomes a small and constant act of kindness toward our own heart, a way of meeting each moment, the pleasant and the painful alike, with tenderness rather than tightness, with peace rather than struggle. There is a story that shows how powerful this gentle softening can be. Let us explore the tale of a hard and unhappy man who lived alone at the edge of an old town, his face set in a permanent frown, his heart shut tight against the world. He had known disappointments in his life, as everyone has, but he had let them harden him. He moved through his days with a clenched jaw and a furrowed brow, suspicious of his neighbors, irritated by small things, certain that life had treated him unfairly. People had learned to keep their distance, which only deepened his loneliness and his bitterness. One day, an old monk came to the town and stayed for a season. The two of them happened to meet often, for the monk would sit each morning beneath a tree near the unhappy man's house. The monk never lectured him, never told him what was wrong with him. He simply greeted the man each day with the same warm, gentle smile, a soft half smile of pure friendliness, asking nothing in return. At first the man scowled and looked away, but the monk's gentle smile met him morning after morning, patient and undemanding, until something in the man began, almost against his will, to stir. One morning, without quite deciding to, he found the corners of his own mouth lifting, just slightly, in answer. It was the first time he had smiled in longer than he could remember. The monk noticed and said only, "It suits you." The man was embarrassed and let his face fall back into its old frown. But the next morning, the small smile came a little more easily. And the morning after that, more easily still. The monk explained, gently, that a face held in a frown for many years teaches the heart to stay closed, but that a face that learns to soften, even a little, can teach the heart to open again. "You have worn your sorrow on your face for so long," the monk said, "that your heart has forgotten it was ever meant to do anything else. Let your face remember gentleness, and your heart will follow it home." The man took this to heart. He began, each morning, to let his face soften, to allow the smallest smile to rest there, even when he felt he had no reason for it. And slowly, over the weeks and months, something deep within him began to thaw. As his face softened, his heart softened. As his heart softened, the world that had seemed so harsh began to seem less so. He greeted his neighbors and was surprised to find them greeting him warmly in return. The loneliness that had walled him in for years began, gently, to dissolve. He had not changed his circumstances at all. He had only changed the set of his own face and let it lead his heart back toward peace. So as we draw near the end of our time together, you might let your own face soften now, just slightly. Let the brow smooth. Let the jaw unclench. And let the gentlest trace of a smile rest upon your lips, the half smile of one who has stopped struggling, who has nothing left to defend, who is simply, peacefully here. Feel how that small softening begins to spread inward, settling the surface of the mind until it grows still and clear, a quiet pool reflecting the whole sky. Let us rest here together for a few breaths in this gentle stillness. Let the winds blow as they will, and let your heart be the mountain that is not moved. We will go on in a moment. We have come a long way together on this journey toward joy. We began by seeing how grasping and comparison and the refusal of happiness close us off from the fullness that is our nature. And step by step we have found the way back through presence, through intimacy, through belonging, through the honest meeting of our own experience, through the fresh and wondering eyes of a mind that does not need to know, through the steady, even heart that no longer rises and falls with every passing wind. Now we arrive at the place where all of this naturally leads. For when the heart becomes truly full, it does not stay full by holding on. It becomes full by overflowing. This is the final secret of joy, and perhaps the deepest. A joy that is hoarded, kept for ourselves alone, slowly curdles. But a joy that flows outward, that spills over into kindness and generosity and blessing, renews itself endlessly. The fuller we become, the more we give, and the more we give, the fuller we become. It is like a fountain that stays fresh only because its water is always spilling over the edge. The Buddha understood generosity as something close to the very heart of an awakened life. In the Buddhist tradition, the giving of gifts, what is called dana, is often named as the first of all the virtues, the foundation on which the rest of the path is built. But the generosity the Buddha spoke of was never a grim duty, never a giving that depletes us. It was understood as one of the natural expressions of a heart that has come home to itself. When we no longer feel that we are lacking, when the fear of not enough has loosened its grip, giving stops being a sacrifice and becomes a joy. We give the way a flower releases its fragrance, not by force, not by effort, but simply because that is what a flower in full bloom does. There is a teaching that when we light a lamp for another, our own path is also brightened. The light we offer does not leave us in darkness. It spreads, and the whole room grows brighter, our own way included. This is the strange mathematics of the generous heart. What we give away in love, we do not lose. We multiply it, and it returns to us, often many times over. There was once a poor woman who understood this better than the wealthy people around her. She had almost nothing, only a small dwelling and barely enough food for herself. Yet whenever a traveler passed through her village hungry and tired, she would invite them in and share whatever little she had, a bowl of rice, a cup of water, a place by her fire. Her neighbors, who had far more, thought her foolish. You can barely feed yourself, they said. Why give away what little you have to strangers you will never see again? The woman only smiled. When I share my bowl, she said, I am never as poor as when I eat alone. A meal given to a hungry traveler fills me more than the same meal eaten by myself. I do not understand it, but I have found it to be true. The less I cling to what little I have, the richer my life becomes. And indeed, those who knew her saw that she was somehow the happiest person in the village, though she had the least. Her small dwelling was always full of warmth and laughter and the company of those she had helped. The wealthy in their large guarded houses often sat alone, anxious over their possessions, while her humble home overflowed with a joy that all their riches could not buy. She had discovered the open secret of the generous heart, that we are made fuller, not emptier, by what we give away in love. Look at how the natural world itself seems to follow this law of generous overflow. Consider the great cycle that sustains all of life. A star burns across unimaginable ages, gathering its riches within itself, and then, at the end, it gives everything away in a vast outpouring, scattering across the heavens the very elements from which new worlds and new life will one day be born. The light of the sun pours out endlessly, freely, asking nothing in return, and from that ceaseless giving comes every green and growing thing, every harvest, every breath. The rain falls and gives itself to the rivers. The rivers give themselves to the sea. The sea rises into clouds and gives itself back again as rain. Everywhere we look, life sustains itself not by hoarding, but by this endless, circulating generosity, each thing giving freely to the next, and being given to in turn. We are part of this same great circulation. When we give freely, we are not doing something unnatural or saintly. We are simply taking our place in the way of things, joining the endless flow of giving and receiving that holds the whole living world together. There is a kind of generosity even simpler than the giving of things, and it is available to us at every moment, costing nothing at all. It is the offering of a silent blessing, a wordless wish sent toward another being, that they be well, that they be happy, that they be at peace. Let us explore a story about a woman who discovered the gentle power of this. She had been feeling isolated and low, caught up in her own worries, moving through her days wrapped in a fog of self-concern. One afternoon, she found herself in a crowded marketplace, surrounded by strangers, feeling more alone than ever in the press of unfamiliar faces. On an impulse, remembering something she had once heard, she decided to try a small and private experiment. As she walked through the crowd, she began, silently, to offer each person she passed a simple, wordless blessing. To the tired-looking merchant behind his stall, she thought, gently, "May you be happy." To the young mother with a child on her hip, "May you be well." To the old man resting in the shade, "May you be at peace." She said nothing aloud. No one knew what she was doing. She simply walked and silently wished each person she saw a little happiness. And something remarkable began to happen. As she sent out these quiet blessings, the fog around her own heart began to lift. The strangers who had seemed so distant a moment before began to feel, somehow, like kin. She noticed the gentleness in a face she would have passed without a glance. She felt a warmth rising in her own chest, growing stronger with each silent blessing she offered. By the time she left the marketplace, the loneliness she had carried in with her had simply dissolved. She had gone in feeling cut off from everyone, and by the simple act of wishing strangers well, she had wished herself back into the family of all living things. The blessing she sent out had blessed, most of all, the one who sent them. This is the hidden truth that runs beneath all generosity. When we bless another, we ourselves are blessed. When we open our hearts to wish others well, our own hearts open, and the joy we wish for them flows first through us on its way out into the world. There is a tender image that captures the spirit of this kind of open-hearted blessing. There was once an elderly woman, gentle and full of years, who loved all living creatures with a simple and boundless tenderness. One day her family took her to visit a great hall by the sea, where countless fish and sea creatures lived behind walls of glass, drifting and turning in their watery world. Her family wandered ahead, glancing quickly from tank to tank, eager to see everything and move on. But the old woman lingered. She moved slowly from one glass wall to the next, and at each one she paused. She would lay her wrinkled hand softly against the glass, lean close, and whisper a quiet blessing to the creatures drifting within. To the silver fish turning in their slow circles, she whispered her good wishes. To the gentle, billowing forms that pulsed through the water like living silk, she offered a tender word. To each creature she passed, every single one, she gave a moment of her loving attention and a soft blessing for its well-being, as though each one were a dear friend she was meeting for the first time. Her family, looking back, might have thought it strange, this old woman murmuring to the fish. But there was something in her face, a softness, a gentle radiance, that stopped them. For she was doing the most natural thing in the world for a heart as full as hers. She was simply letting her love overflow onto everything she met, holding back from nothing, blessing all of it, asking for nothing in return. Her cup was so full that it spilled over onto every living thing that crossed her path. And anyone who stood near her could feel it, that warmth, that overflowing tenderness, that joy that had grown so large it could no longer be contained, and so it poured itself out as blessing upon the whole of life. This is where the long path toward joy finally arrives. It arrives not in getting, but in giving, in letting the fullness overflow, rather than holding it for ourselves. The grasping that began our journey, the reaching for more, was always pointed in the wrong direction. For the heart was never meant to be a vessel that fills up and seals itself shut. It was meant to be a fountain, taking in and pouring out, receiving the gift of life and giving it onward, endlessly renewed by its own generosity. When we live this way, blessing what we meet, giving freely of our warmth, letting our joy spill over onto everyone and everything around us, we discover that the fullness we sought all along was never something to be captured and kept. It was something to be lived and shared and given away, again and again, freely, like sunlight, like rain, like an old woman's hand laid gently against the glass. There is a teaching the Buddha gave that gathers all of this into a single, radiant image. He spoke of a boundless love, a love without limit, and said that we should let it shine out in every direction, above, below, and all around, without measure and without exception. Just as a mother would protect her only child with her very life, he taught, so should we cultivate a heart of boundless tenderness toward all living beings. This is not a love we have to manufacture by force. It is what the human heart naturally pours out once it has stopped defending itself, once it has come home to its own fullness. The whole long path we have walked together, through grasping and letting go, through fear and forgiveness, through distance and intimacy, through striving and the gentle half-smile of one who strives no more leads here to a heart so full that it can do nothing but bless the world it finds itself in. And in that blessing, freely given, we find the deepest joy a person can know, the joy of a love that asks for nothing and pours itself out upon everything, endlessly, like light. Let us be still here together now, in this fullness. Feel whatever warmth is present in your own heart, and let it quietly extend outward to those near you and to all beings everywhere. When you are ready, we will continue on. And so we come to the end of our journey together. We began by looking for joy in the wrong places. We thought it was something loud and rare, waiting somewhere up ahead, on the far side of getting everything right. We chased it, reached for it, and somehow always seemed to miss it. But along the way, something gentler revealed itself. We saw that joy is not a distant peak to be climbed toward. It is a fullness already woven into the most ordinary moments of a life. It was never far away. It was only overlooked, hidden beneath our grasping, our comparing, our endless reaching for the next thing. We learned that joy grows quiet, not loud, that it deepens when we stop hoarding it and let it overflow, that it lives in the simple fact of being fully present, honestly meeting our own experience, exactly as it is. We saw that we belong here, woven into the whole of life, as much as any tree, any river, any star. And we saw that the steady, even heart, the heart that is not knocked over by the changing winds, rests beneath everything else, like calm water beneath the waves. Through all of it ran a single image, the half-smile of the Buddha, the soft eyes, the unclenched jaw, the faint and easy smile of one who has stopped struggling, who wants for nothing, who is simply, peacefully, at home in this moment. That half-smile is not a performance. It is what the heart looks like when it has finally come to rest. If there is one thing to carry with you from this time together, let it be that gentle softening, the willingness to stop reaching, just for now, to let this moment be enough, to meet your own life with tenderness rather than struggle, and to let the faintest smile rest upon your face, for no reason at all, simply because you are here and alive, and that is a quiet wonder all its own. None of this asks anything of you. There is nothing to achieve here, nothing to get right, no peak to climb toward. The fullness we have spoken of is not earned through effort. It is uncovered through letting go. And so there is no need to hold on to any of these words, or to try to remember them, or to make anything of them at all. Let them settle into you the way rain settles into the earth, quietly, without your having to do a thing. What is meant to stay will stay. What matters will return to you, gently, in its own time, in the small moments of an ordinary day, when you least expect it. For the truth of all this was never really in the words. The words only point. The truth is in the warmth you feel right now, in your own chest, in the breath moving softly in and out, without your effort, in the simple, astonishing fact of being here, alive and aware, on this turning earth, beneath the same wide sky that has watched over every being who ever lived. You belong to all of it. You always have. There is nowhere else you need to be, and no one else you need to become. You are already home. So let this be a moment of pure rest. Whatever the day asked of you, it is behind you now. Whatever tomorrow may bring, it can wait until tomorrow. For now, There is only this gentle settling, this softening, this letting go. The half smile resting on your lips. The heart, at last, at ease. Let your body settle now. Let the day's weight set itself fully down. There is nothing more to do, nothing to reach for, nothing to fix. Only this breath, and then the next, carrying you gently toward rest. Sleep well, and thank you for joining us here at Midnight Monk.